that was electronically posted. And is there any declaration of pecuniary interest with regards to that agenda of committee of the whole for July 23rd? Okay, if one does arise, you can. Sorry, Councillor Hutchison? Did I hear something out there? Okay. So moving on now, we're a little past our delegation time, but we have Kim Earls, Executive Director of South Central Ontario Region Economic Development Corporation, Southwest Community Transit Initiative. And Madam Clerk, who do we have taking this on?
Stephanie Stewart's going to provide an introduction to Kim.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Welcome, Stephanie. And I'll pass it over to you.
Perfect. Good morning, County Council and Warden McQueen. I'd like to introduce to you Kim Earls, who is representing South Central Ontario Region Economic Development Corporation this morning. And she's going to talk to us about a new transit initiative that Grey County is interested in being a part of. There's lots of opportunities for us here, and I think this is a great initiative and something that will continue to build our transit network here and gives us lots of opportunities for growth. So what will this do for us? It will create collaboration across the industry, so it will help us connect to lots of transit agencies as far as Norfolk and Oxford County and just all over. So we're looking broader. We're not just focusing on Grey County. We're looking, how do we really help our residents to get as far as they possibly can, and how do they get there? So we'll be creating those maps and those connections and those visuals so people can see, how do I get all the way from Owen Sound to where I would like to get to? And also this partnership will help us leverage economies of scale. So it'll provide us opportunities to get better discounts and make sure that we're getting the right opportunities for our taxpayers. So at that point, I'd like to turn it over to Kim, and she'll share our message and tell us all about the Southwest Community Transit Initiative.
Thanks, Stephanie, and welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm thrilled to be able to join you. I wish it was in person. I love Grey County. It's amazing. My son is actually up there now, and I'm somewhat jealous that I'm not with him. So thank you for having me. And I'm not sure if we're able to look at the presentation. I apologize in advance. My broadband internet here, I live in Norfolk County, is a little spotty. So I'm going to apologize in advance if I zip off the screen. So first of all, yes, we're Southwest Community Transit, which is really an organization that has been come together very informally. And Tara, I believe if you could forward the next slide, please. Thank you. And so just a bit of background, I won't spend a lot of time on this. You know, transportation has been identified as a barrier for economic development and community development as a whole in rural Ontario for some time. And certainly SCORE has been working on the transportation file with community transportation being an important part of that since early 2010, but we were not alone. So counties and communities such as yourselves, Rural Ontario Institute, the former Southwest Economic Alliance, lots of groups recognize that we need funding and systems in place for community transportation. Within Grey County itself, we've had the opportunity to work with Stephanie Stewart and in Owen Sound, Cassandra Cassio, and so we've had some great connections with your staff. And next slide, please, Tara. Thank you. So I won't read through these, but this sort of just gives a little bit of further background and what SCORE kind of has taken a bit of a more of a leadership role in, I guess, are just connecting the communities within our 5 county regions. So for those of you that are not familiar with SCORE, we're municipally owned economic development corporation, and we're owned by the counties of Brent, Elgin, Middlesex, Norfolk, and Oxford. And so, you know, like your communities in Grey and other nearby municipalities, you know, we've struggled with the need for transportation for quite some time. So as Stephanie outlined better than I ever could, the benefits are sort of economies of scale, sharing information, and really sort of feeding into a wider transportation plan for our rural communities. And next slide, please, Tara. Thank you. And so again, this this slide just goes through some of the benefits that the wider coordination provides. So use of similar technologies for services and potential for joint procurement, coordination of marketing, promotion, common messaging, a seamless experience for riders, similar fare structures, all those things that are important and complex within our own systems. And certainly we provide support and opportunity working together as a larger group. So we've done some fantastic things already, I think, as information sharing, and we're at the point now where we think it's both prudent and wise and an efficient use of taxpayer dollars to do some more sharing and become even more efficient. Next slide, please, Tara. So some of the simple successes in coordination are just the ability to market and have some marketing efficiencies and leverage some of those skill sets. So the example that I have here is a marketing piece from town of Tillsonburg, the TGO system, and Norfolk Ride Norfolk. So they're able to share in some common marketing media pieces, as well as they're, through our connection, we're able to look at wider media pieces. So the large signage pieces that go on our buses for advertising, so for some revenue generation. So this is just an example to give you an idea of some of the marketing benefits that are involved. Next slide, please, Tara. The other is a seamless system for riders. So this is, really important. So working on the community transportation project, all of the coordinators in Southern Ontario, we've gotten together, talked about having a similar style of vehicle, similar decals, similar potentially uniforms for drivers, fare structure and revenue management. So if I get on, an Owen Sound and I drive, I take the transit down to say Guelph, and then I'm able to zip over to some other communities through Brant E-Ride, that the rider will have the same expectations of experience. And, if I'm a rider that needs some accessible services, that they would be the same when I got on, in say, Norfolk or Brant, and I went into Owen Sound, that I could definitely expect the same type of services there. And that is done through coordination at the systems and operations level. So next slide, please, Tara. And this is just a super rough draft that gives us an idea. So anything sort of in the blue and purple family are communities that are part of the association and that we've been working with. And the yellow lines I've sort of used to indicate, where there could be some additional connectivity without too much problem. And I see that I failed to add my yellow line sort of between that Kitchener, Stratford into the Guelph, which connects right back up into Grey County, Owen Sound, and all of those communities. But connected with the group, and we looked at the 3-tier level. So the executive would be for someone at Grey County to appoint someone to sit on the executive, which would be the steering of the organization and the association to sort of make those large, visionary and influencer decisions. And then the technical committee would be folks like Stephanie and, the folks in the operations that really do the mapping. So where will our connections meet, those kinds of things. And then a stakeholder group, and stakeholders could be people like Rural Ontario Institute, who have done a ton of work on community transportation, and who in fact we use their report towards coordinated transportation as a basis for our last jumping point here to get to where we are. And so this is a lot of work that has gone into this. And I see my last point is, I think this is something that is a sort of a first of its kind collaboration in Ontario and Canada. And I really do think it is a big deal and something for each of the counties that are participating to certainly be proud of and continue to contribute to. So next slide, please, Tara. And this is just a little cleaner visual of that three-tiered group. And then you can see the orange level on the bottom, you know, leaves way for, and I just used Tillsonburg for as a for instance, because that's what I was most familiar with at the time, that you would have your community inputs, whether that's social services organizations, long-term care facility, hospitals, and so sort of feeding up into the full model. Next slide, please, Tara. So we went ahead and created a logo. We have a, we're lucky to have a marketing and graphic designer as part of the group as well. So this is a sample logo that they've created, which we all thought was fantastic. Next group, slide, please, Tara. And then, so the future of the community transportation network. So the funding for the intercommunity transit project sort of ends March 2023. Not everyone that is involved in the association has received the community transportation funding. Some communities have committed municipal dollars. So, but we're looking sort of as a coordinated group to, you know, save on dollars, save on taxpayer, but also to provide a bit of an advocacy efforts for the province to say, you know, this can be done, this is being needed, and, you know, we'd like to work with you to ensure that this is part of the Southwestern Ontario Master Plan, and this is important to our communities. Next slide, please, Tara. And I'm just gonna wrap up really quickly to point that was mentioned earlier is because of COVID, you know, we are seeing some uptick in some of our real estate development, and people are moving, I think, to more rural areas. And I think it provides an opportunity for us in rural and small urban communities, but we will need to, I think, have that infrastructure, those infrastructure pieces in place. And so I really think now is a time to continue on with the great strides that we've made to date. So thank you so much for having me here.
Well, thank you very much, Kim. And Stephanie, do you have anything to add before I go to general questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, questions from kind of councilors? Any questions?
So, Mr. Warden, I just will note for council that the raise hand feature is unavailable today. I don't know why, but anyway, if they have questions, they can either raise the actual hand or use the chat feature.
Okay, I see Councillor Potter, so I'm going to take him first, and I'll go across. I'll have to swipe my screen across to see who else is. But go ahead, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor, and thank you, Kim and Stephanie. I didn't see anything regarding the need where, and I think we need to look at where the needs are greatest, and you know, how can we determine what routes would best serve our county without knowing what the needs are and where the needs are. So I didn't see that. I'm hoping that will be part of the program to determine that. We are trying to set up our own system, and that is based on what we know of the need, and we know there's even more than that. But so when will you be looking at where the needs actually are?
So Kim, are you able to address that?
Sure, and maybe Stephanie, if you want to jump in as well. Certainly each county or municipality that's participating has done their own probably ridership survey, needs analysis. And then as a wider association, what we're doing is taking those pockets of systems and connecting them where it makes the most sense. And this right now, I think, is one of the key benefits for the association as a whole, is being able to connect us to those wider community pieces. But certainly individually, I know that in the case of Gray and Owen Sound, Stephanie and Cassandra have done a lot of work on looking at routing and where the needs are. So maybe Stephanie, you want to speak to that?
Sure,
Stephanie?
yes. Thank you, Warden McQueen. So in regards to our routes, a lot of our routes were determined by our grant. So a lot of our routes we just actually don't have control over because the grant was very specific that we needed to run along Highway 10, 26, and Highway 6. What I have been able to do is collaborate with our municipal partners and chat with staff to find out where they wanted the stops to be. So that has been completely curtailed by staff. They have told me based on their conversations with their stakeholders and members of the community as to where they wanted the stops to be. So after today's presentation and if council approves the report I have brought forward, we will begin to share and educate the public as to where our stops will be and how they can use the system more.
Okay, other questions?
I have Councillor Robinson and Councillor Soever.
Okay, Councillor Robinson and then Councillor Soever. Go ahead, Councillor Robinson.
I don't have a question at this point. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Soever.
Yes, I think this is a great initiative, but I don't think it goes far enough. If you look at the map on page 7, you can see that the routes for Grey County in Guelph, Orangeville, and the town of the Blue Mountains. Now, certainly most of our traffic does not originate in Guelph, Orangeville, and the town of the Blue Mountains. Most of it originates in the GTA. So I agree there needs to be integration, and I've been pushing integrated transportation plans. And one of our big problems, particularly here in the eastern part of Grey County, is that we are on the border with Simcoe County. And, you know, Simcoe County is quite far ahead in terms of having a transportation network. Collingwood has one, and Simcoe County actually has one that goes up to Penetanguishene to Barrie, and then they're hooked into the GO transit system. So I think, you know, it probably behooves us to, you know, extend this to more of a provincial level almost, because most of our traffic does originate in the GTA. And with collaboration with those larger networks, we're certainly going to get a lot more ridership and make the thing far more economic for us. Because if we're not connected or integrated with the systems to the southeast of us in the GTA, then, you know, that system is always going to be small and isn't going to maximize its ridership potential. So I just think it's a great idea, but I would encourage, you know, expanding it to where the traffic actually originates from. And that way, you know, there could be an opportunity to scale this up in a big way.
Okay, well, thanks for that comment, Mayor Soever, Councillor Soever. Kim, do you have any comments there?
I completely agree. I think that this is a good first step for connectivity. You know, we certainly will view this as a stepping stone to greater connectivity, you know, across the province, and hopefully that Ministry of Transportation will take maybe a more active role in providing some of those gaps. And but I completely agree with that comment.
Maybe that's one of those things that we get a delegation with the Minister of Transportation along with our corridors to add that in the conversation, which we're trying to do at some point. We had something set up in March, but it didn't materialize, so we're going to keep moving toward that. Any follow up on that, Councillor Soever?
Yes, I think that's something we should pursue as part of our integrated transportation plan that we're talking to the ministry about. I haven't got the ministry's attention now. They did lower the speed limit on Highway 26, and it's caused quite a bit of controversy. So we're on their radar now, I can say. I'm on other people's radar too, and maybe not in a good way, but.
Well, at least they're keeping their eyes up and the speed down.
Yep. Well, the speed is down. The eyes aren't up. We had a head-on accident in the 50 zone on the 15th, and Fortunately, people were driving at a slow speed, so both drivers walked away. If they were both doing 80, I think the results would have been quite different.
Okay, thank you for that. Other questions, comments from county councilors?
I see Councillor Woodbury.
Councilor Woodbury, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was a good point by Councillor Soever, but we also have to keep in mind that was the big push behind Southgate's bid for the lower part of the Highway 10 route, that it goes to Orangeville and does connect with the GO bus. That was part of the idea of the donation we got to help out and to push that along. So we do have partial, at least, connection with the GTA through the GO bus in Orangeville.
Good point, Councilor Woodbury, and all we can do is to keep expanding those connection points. Any other comments from county councilors? So going back to you, Kim, there was a suggestion, or Stephanie, about having a person from Grey County sit on this like a committee. You mentioned something in there, one of the slides. Is that something we need to put forward today, or is that something that, Kim?
Yeah, thank you, Warden. I believe that, you know, once you've committed to participating and signing the MOU, that you then have the opportunity as a full member to assign someone to both the executive and the operations level, which I assume would continue to be Stephanie. And certainly then, you know, as a partner, you would help to steer all further, you know, advocacy, operations issues, and routing all those things. So.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Maybe I'll ask county council, is any opposition to moving forward with that MOU? All right, so Madam CEO and Stephanie, then I guess keep moving toward that then and bring that back, I guess, right?
Yes, I think we can simply, we'll take your positive comments from this morning's delegation and we'll move forward with that.
Right, and I think Stephanie would be probably that right choice. I would say anyway, but maybe. Okay, so any last comments? Any last comments from you, Kim?
Just thank you so much for your participation in the Community Transportation Association to date. It really has been valuable, and thank you for letting me come and speak about it today.
So quick question, Kim, how do you get this out to other areas that aren't doing it today? How do we share that news? So
if I understand your question correctly, so we're going around to all of our municipalities that have been participating, and I'm doing presentations as we are now. To the further wider group, I think once we have our MOU established, the intent of the committee as it sort of stands now is certainly to be as inclusive as possible. So for you that are members, if you want to reach out to your municipal neighbors, or if the executive identifies sort of even further gaps, or as we begin to work a little more closely maybe with MTO on these things, we certainly do see it going wider. And I think that the exact how-to task by task will be something that the executive group will really influence and dictate.
So certainly groups like the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus and even ROMA, Rural Ontario Municipality Associations, are in OSAM as well, and AMO. So that's something to think about there as well. Well, seeing no other comments or questions, thank you very much for presenting. Oh,
sorry, Mr.
comment? Warden,
I did see Brian or Councillor Millen's hand up. I didn't know if he had a further question.
Councillor, well, he's holding his head up, but maybe he's got a question there.
Well, just a comment similar to or to Councillor Woodbury's, was that going down Highway 6, it goes into the GO train. So there's another connection to the GTA there.
Absolutely, yeah.
The other, just a question I had, it's always have these questions, is directed to Kim, was, do you have any idea of the level of ridership that the system may, you know, what's the capacity of the system that is proposed, and how many people are potentially actually going to ride and use the system? Because as I'm sure everyone knows, there's been a multitude of different transportation companies try to run these routes, and there's no money in running empty buses up and down the highway.
Okay, that's a good question. I guess that's the whole idea of building the committee and expanding it. Kim, do you have any comments?
Through the chair, yes. 100%. We don't have that information now, so that is sort of the intent of building. And to sort of pass comments, we do have as part of the committee representation from the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus. Kate Burns Gallagher sits on our committee, as well as we send out all of our information to ministries that we feel would be the stakeholder group. So certainly municipal affairs and housing, OMAF for those folks. But as to your point about ridership, I think that's something that as an organization and an association that we will really have to develop, and hopefully we'll get some good strong data also from MTO on sort of commuter patterns, so that we can start to do a marketing and education program as well.
Okay.
Maybe you'll have to, thanks to Councillor Millen, maybe you'll have to purchase that electric bus and everybody will want to ride the electric bus.
Well, if it's an electric bus, it would be different than a magic school bus, so.
Yep, the wheels on the bus keep going around and around, right, Councillor Millen? All right. Any other comments? Again, thanks, Kim, for bringing that forward. And I think we got a direction there from County Council to move forward to the MOU. And I would most definitely think that Stephanie would be that contact person. So, okay. Well, thank you. Keep in touch. Keep us in the loop. All right. Moving on then. Let's see what time we got. 10:22. So our next delegation is not till 10:30. So maybe we can slip into the consent. Maybe can we do that? All right. So there. Let me think here. There are how many items? 3 items for consent agenda. Are any of those items wish to be pulled? Because I have it moved by Councillor Potter, second by Councillor Mackey, that we approve the consent agenda. I'm hearing none to be pulled. Any opposition? Any opposed to that motion? That is carried. All right. Community transportation update. Shall we head into that one, Madam Clerk, or do we think we have time for that one before our delegation?
I think so.
Okay, so let's do that. So that's moved by Councillor Millen, second by Councillor Potter. The motion is there with regards to the community transportation update. And this is with regards to coming back from, trying to think when that was, early this year, I think, Stephanie. And I'll maybe pass it over to you, Stephanie.
Perfect. Thank you, Warden McQueen, and hello again, County Council. It's just been a few moments here, so we'll just jump right in since we're staying on the same topic. So as Warden McQueen had said, I presented to you the last time sharing that we weren't quite sure what MTO had planned for us and that we had chatted with them about a possible extension. And some of those things have now come to light. So MTO has given us an extension for 6 months. They will be lifting, the 6 months starts as soon as the Emergency Act is lifted, which that hasn't happened yet. But we have a plan in place to try to be launched well before that will happen so that we won't be in that predicament. So we have a presentation here today, and what I'm chatting with you about is a potential local franchise driver seat who can implement an awesome transit system for us with the information that's presented for you today. It will secure transit running up and down Highway 10 and 26 and Highway 6, and a potential option for Grey Road 4. So I don't want to dive too deep into it because there is a lot of information in the report, but if anyone has any questions for me, now would be time to ask.
So just for clarity, Stephanie, before I go to County Councils, you do include in this resolution that we have on the floor, that does include Grey Road 4. So it is included in that. I guess if that was wanting to be pulled out on separately, but it is included all in the same motion. So County Council, any discussion on the motion? I'll switch my
Councillor Soever, Councillor Keaveney.
Okay, so go ahead first, Councillor Soever, and then Councillor Keaveney. Go ahead, Councillor Soever.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stephanie, for this very comprehensive report. I have a few questions. The in the background of the discussion, it talks about driver's seat providing 6 10-passenger vehicles. So these 10-passenger vehicles, is that the capacity with social distancing, or if it's a 10-passenger van, how many people could it actually take?
Stephanie?
Through you, Warden McQueen. So the vehicle does have a capacity of 10. So if we would like to ensure that everybody can ride it, we will be leaving it at 10 and asking that everyone wears a mask and that social distancing. It will not be obviously achievable because you'll be sitting close to each other in the vehicle, so masks are encouraged. There are a few safety measures that are very unique with driver's seat that I'm excited to share too. We will be encouraging riders to be booking their rides online, which will allow us to have complete control and understanding of who's riding our vehicles. So what that does for COVID particularly is it allows for contact tracing. So it will help us know if anything were to happen, who was on that bus, and we can contact those individuals and let them know that something happened and we have that resources. Now, I'm sure the question will come up, well, how do you ensure everybody gets on the bus and managing capacity? I've already thought of some plans for that, which will be while we're establishing the system at the beginning and learning about our ridership, we'll have some trailer vehicles following behind to ensure that everybody gets on and educating them about our processes to ensure that people can ride it and are using it safely.
So a follow-up, Mr. Warden.
Go ahead.
So has the health department approved the people close to each other, or have they had a chance to comment on this?
So medical health unit, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, exactly.
Through you, Warden McQueen, I will continue to consult with public health and I will share with them our plans. We are working with a contractor who has their own policies and procedures for COVID. But we'll be collaborating with the contractor in regards to their policies and public health to ensure that everybody is safe.
Thank you. I have a few more, but I'll wait till other people.
Well, are they quick, or do you want to? You're on the roll here. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the schedule and I noticed the van leaves from Meaford. And if you were to want to travel from Owen Sound to the village, say if you were a student at a Georgian college and you wanted to work at the village, you really only have one opportunity to get there in the morning. That's leaving Owen Sound at 6:42 and getting to the village at 8:15. And then coming back, you would have to leave the village. If you want to go to Owen Sound, you would have to leave the village at 5:15 to get to Owen Sound at 7:25. So that doesn't give, it does also in the report talk about consideration of evening entertainment at the village, but if you have to leave there at 5:15, you can't really go for dinner or entertainment at the village. So I'm just wondering why the vehicle, the 7:15 trip from the village only goes to Meaford and not to Owen Sound.
Okay, Stephanie, do you have an answer for that or thought?
Yes, through your Warden McQueen. So all of our routes have been collaborated with our municipal partners. So I've spoken with staff at the village and staff who work for Blue Mountains, and all of these times actually are correlated and have meaningful connections. So I'm trying in my mind just to look exactly at the example that you're giving here right now, but yes, not everything will be perfect and not everybody will be able to get where they want to get to at the very beginning, but we'll continue to learn and develop as we go along. This is simply a start and we will build as people say, this is what I need and I would like more. The reason that these times are set the way they are was so that way people could get to employment. So I've coordinated with the village to find out exactly what time chefs need to arrive and ski patrol staff need to arrive and just all the different and maintenance and housing and anybody possibly working at the village and finding out what time they need to get there. And same for Chapman's and our long-term care in Markdale and all over Grey County. So I've really worked hard to coordinate with our employers so that the timings are meaningful. But I'm more than happy to sit down with anyone who wants to look further into scheduling and work through some kinks because there's always room for improvement.
Thank you. And given that, there's obviously, you mentioned a lot of people there. Given the fact that we're limited to 10 passenger vans, is there an opportunity to go to bigger vehicles at some time during the 3 years? Because, this is supposed to be a pilot to see what kind of demand there will be. But I think we're pretty limited here in terms of size. In terms of, you can have 10 people and really from Owen Sound to the village, there's really one trip in the morning. if you want to go from Owen Sound, and if you want to go to the village to Owen Sound, there's one trip in the evening. So that means you got a round trip for maximum 10 employees. Well, if we start to exceed that, which I can see happening quite easily, then, and this is a pilot project, do we have the flexibility in the contract to expand that so that, you know, we can actually see what the real demand is? Because there won't be an opportunity to test the real demand if our capacity is so limited.
Okay, Stephanie? You're on mute.
Through you, Warden, thank you. Councilor Swerver, those are very valid points, and I agree with you. We do need to ensure that we have enough capacity so that way we can get a good realistic expectation of what our ridership is. So I do agree, and I will ensure that that is in our contract and that I will work with our partner to have those possibilities of expanding or adding additional vehicles or additional routes and to continue to build.
Thank you.
So that's a good starting point what you're talking about, Stephanie. Madam CEO?
Yeah, if I may, what we've tried to do with this initial report is to really get the service up and off the ground and try to stay within as close as we could to the resources that were provided to us through the grant. And I think as we recognize, hopefully, that there is more demand, we can work with the provider and put together the business case so that council's aware of you know, that cost benefit analysis, what additional investment will be required to carry what additional folks. So our intention here is to continue to gather information and to bring that back so council understands what the financial implications are of continuing to enhance the service.
So these are a starting point. You got to start somewhere, right? Right. So that's good. Those are good comments, Mayor Swerver. Do you have anything else? And then we'll move on.
Well, I'm just wondering, the proposal is to sole source. I'm wondering, given the uncertainty that our school bus companies are facing, whether there might not be an opportunity to look toward them to potentially provide a bigger vehicle at the same price, because I'm sure they would love to have a 3-year contract at this point, not knowing actually if they're going to be in business in the fall.
Right. Well, certainly with COVID-19, there's a lot of things up in the air for sure.
Exactly. Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're quite welcome. And good questions. And next is Councillor Keaveney and then Councillor Mackey, I see. Go ahead, Councillor Keaveney.
Thanks very much, Mr. Warden, and I appreciate the conversation. Some of my thoughts have been covered with Councillor Swerver's points. Just one thought though, Stephanie, I'm wondering if you could reach out to a staff at the municipality of Meaford. I know that they'd like to have some consultation with you on timing and routes and so on, and recognizing that you have reached out to businesses, and it sounds like you've talked to most municipalities, but just if you could reach out to our municipal staff in Meaford.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Mackey.
Thanks, Mr. Warden, and thanks very much, Stephanie, for all the hard work you've done in regards to this transportation project. Just a question in regards to the on-demand system. Certainly glad to see that you're looking into that. Just wondering when and how far along you are and when the county council can expect to get some more information in regards to possibly the plan for implementation.
Good question. Stephanie?
For you, Warden McQueen. Thank you for the question, Councillor Mackey. So we are currently speaking with Bruce County and Dufferin County. I'm in the process of collaborating with them just to start looking at what a joint bylaw would look like, just to get all 3 of our counties on the same page, because ultimately if we could have a joint bylaw between all 3 counties, it would create a seamless system, and it would allow for riders to move freely between the counties. So where we are with that is I've had the discussions with our counties, and I've been speaking with Uber. So ultimately it's just a matter of continuing to do some work. Once I get our conventional transit system off the ground and running, I'm happy to bring a report back to council and share what our next steps could possibly be.
Thanks very much. And yeah, you touched on it, you know, reaching out to Bruce County. I believe Bruce County has struck a transportation task force. I'm just wondering if Grey County should be reaching out and participating in that task force.
Okay, Stephanie, are you familiar with that?
Yes, thank you, Warden McQueen. So yes, they have began the task force, and I spoke with the Director of Transportation, Miguel. I am more than happy to join their team, and I've offered as many resources as I possibly can to support Bruce County, just because I understand that Grey is unique, where we have someone in my position and Bruce doesn't. So I've offered to support and help wherever we can and to collaborate, so that way we have the best system for everybody.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Mackey. And Councillor Burley.
Oh, Mr. Warden, I also have Councillor Robinson and Councillor Potter.
Okay, I recognize Councillor Burley now, but I'll get Councillor Robinson and Potter next then. Go ahead, Councillor Burley.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Stephanie, I wonder, would you be able to have a conversation with our airport manager at our Wharton Capital International Airport, since the route does go into Warrenton, and we could give a connection to all over the world? You had that conversation?
I'm sure she has, Stephanie.
Through you, Warden McQueen, I actually haven't spoken to the manager yet at the airport, but I definitely will. So I will connect with them. Thank you.
That's a connection to the rest of the world, according to Burley, right? So there you go. All right, Councillor Robinson and then Councillor Potter. Go ahead, Councillor Robinson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Warden. And Stephanie, thank you very much for a very comprehensive report and presentation. We all know, and we continue to say that transportation is a barrier to many things within the lifestyle of our Grey County residents and business owners. Certainly a barrier to employment, healthcare, housing. And I really feel that the staff recommendation and the motion before us contributes to improving that flow of people moving to where they need to go. I would hope that within the motion on the sixth paragraph, that it would be amended to read that County Council wishes to proceed with the Grey Road 4 route, and the balance of that paragraph, including the Grey Road 4 route in the Transportation Now, certainly would provide for an inclusive service for all of Grey County residents. And I really feel that it's the first step to connectivity for all of Grey County. So I would look to my colleagues around the horseshoe to provide that. By way of having that in the motion and voting in a positive way. So that's my comment. My question, Stephanie, is data collection. Could you please drill down in terms of how you would envision collecting ridership data, just in terms of seasonal and maybe route times, etc.? Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, Stephanie.
Through you, Warden McQueen. Thank you, Councillor Robinson. So actually, we're very fortunate with Driver's Seat. They will be able to collect all of that data for us. So with the technology that they already have in place, they can tell us exactly where people get on the bus, where people get off the bus, what time of the day, all of that will be collected for us. Additionally, they can do some further data on their drivers and just how their drivers are driving to ensure safety. So that's a whole other feature, but a great thing to have. And in regards to the quantitative and qualitative side of collecting data, I think it's really important to get on that bus and talk to people. So we will be doing that as well. We will have people getting on the bus and asking people about their experience. What are they liking? What are they not liking? And how we can improve it. Because yes, the numbers are important, but ultimately talking to people is the way you learn the best.
Thank you, Stephanie. And just before I go on, for clarity to the Madam Clerk, Councillor Robinson did point out it did say in the third last paragraph that it does say that should council wish to expand. If we want to change that, Madam Clerk, should there be an amendment to this motion to recognize it to be included? Because it's sort of, Madam Clerk.
I think the second paragraph covers that staff be directed to negotiate a single source that includes Grey Road 4. So as long as the second paragraph remains in there, then Grey Road 4 will be part of that. And as Stephanie's report noted, it would be phase 4.
So
thank you.
Thank you.
So there's no need for an amendment as long as paragraph 2 stays in there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Robinson, do you have any comments to that then?
Thank you for that clarity, and I very much appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. All right, then next is Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Warden. Stephanie, I don't envy you at all. This is a a very difficult and complicated task. I just wanted to comment though that when you were talking about the demand system, I don't know what's available, but I just wondered if we have investigated that possibility with Simcoe County. We have a lot of people coming in and out of our side of Gray from Simcoe, and it'd be great to look at what we might be able to do there if we could look at an on-demand system similar to what we're talking about with our other neighbors. So if that's possible, I would love to see us do it.
Okay, Stephanie, do you have a comment to that?
Yes, thank you, Warden McQueen. For sure, I agree. I'm happy to talk to Simcoe as well. One of the things we are doing with our bus is the timing of when the bus arrives at the village. It does align so that people can get on the bus that's linked to Collingwood and also to the Simcoe links so that they can get all the way to Barrie or Wasaga and they can travel on. So that thought process has been already inputted into the plan, but I will continue to talk to Simcoe to look into if we were to implement Uber or other things, how we can have that collaboration.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie and Councillor Potter. Any other comments, questions with regards to this motion? Councillor Mackey?
Thanks, Warden McQueen. Just in regards to the Highway 4 corridor, you know, the $70,000 and your conversations with Bruce County, seeing that it's going to Walkerton, are they going to be funding some of that route? Wondering why it's going to Walkerton and not stopping in Hanover if it's a Grey County initiative.
Stephanie?
Through you, Warden. Yes, the intention with the Grey Road 4 route is for it to have 5 trips a day, running 2 days a week to start. The plan will be to start in Durham, it goes Durham, Hanover, Walkerton, with a connection into Flesherton at least 2 to 3 times, if I can remember correctly. And the reason that we're connecting into Flesherton is so that way people can go to Orangeville or they can connect up to Owen Sound. But yes, we are stopping in it's Flesherton, Durham, Hanover, and Walkerton. Why we're going to Walkerton is the feedback I've received from our colleagues and residents in West Grey and in Hanover is that a lot of residents do travel to Walkerton for appointments. So that's the reason that we're traveling all the way there. It's so our residents can access all of the services that they are in need of.
Okay, is that anything else? Go ahead.
So is there a financial contribution from Bruce County then for the transit into Walkerton?
Through you, Warden McQueen, at this time, I have not had that discussion with Bruce County.
She's going to work on that. She's going to work on that, Councillor. Right?
Warden McQueen, I have Councillor Fleet.
Yes, I saw that. Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Councillor Fleet.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thank you, Stephanie, for your report. What I'd really like to see is, like, we're in phase 4 of this project, and I'd really sort of like to see it into 3 phases where we would be put into phase 3. You know, we're one county and we don't want to leave anybody out, and I think it's very important to have that route between Flesherton, Hanover, and Walkerton in the 3rd phase. That's just my own comment and my own thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, point well taken, I think, to Stephanie. Councillor Millen, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. 2 things. First of all, the single source thing kind of concerns me a bit. Where was driver's seat when we put out an RFP for these routes? Did they just all of a sudden appear out of thin air, or where did they come from?
Okay, Stephanie.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'd actually prefer to defer this to the CAO if she wouldn't mind supporting me on this one.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
A year ago, when we put out the negotiated RFP, driver's seat was a respondent to the negotiated RFP. The conditions that we were operating under at that time were very different than the conditions that we're in right now. So our anticipated ridership and the capacity that we thought that we would be working towards right from the outset of program delivery were different. So we made an assessment at that point about the direction that we thought we needed to go. And here we are a number of months later and conditions have changed. There's a great deal of uncertainty out there, I think, from the economy and what people's behavior is actually going to be like. So I think that the driver's seat heard the presentation that was made to council earlier and reflected on that, and then reached out to us with another opportunity to look at something that was more appropriately scaled for where we are today. So they have been part of this conversation all the way through.
Okay, Councillor Millen.
All right, that's that's fine. Thank you for that answer. My other question or comments, I guess, it regards the Highway 4 route. If you want to use round figures, it's 50,000 a day to run that route. And if you scale it up, it's 250K for the week if you run it the way it is being proposed. That's $250,000 that is not funded from the grants that the province and the feds have provided us. I'm wondering if maybe we should separate this particular phase or particular clauses out of the larger motion, because because of the pandemic, we're under some financial duress. To be adding on unfunded or unfunded budgeted, I'm a little uncomfortable committing to 2 more years of funding or of expenses that aren't funded through the grants.
So just for clarity, Councillor Millen, I think this is taking it to the end of December, and then your budget is you're going to extend that Grey Road 4. You'll have to put more money in the budget. Is that correct, Stephanie?
Well, you're going to have to put. Oh, that's right. Well, it's not budgeted money now. They're taking money out, proposing to take money for the Highway 4 route out of the one-time funding reserve.
Right.
So it's not budgeted. And if I read the motion correctly, we're committing ourselves to putting funds for that route into the next 2 years' budgets.
But is that not subject to the budget approval, though? I guess for clarity, is it taking it to the end of the year subject to budget approval on 2021, 2022? Just for clarity.
Maybe we're talking semantics here, but I will defer to the CEO, or CAO rather, but in clause 6, it says with 2021 and 2022 to be included in the annual budget, not to be considered in the annual budget, but to be included in the budget. So in my mind, that says we're committing ourselves to those 2 years.
Okay.
Again, maybe semantics, but and just.
I think we're a little short on a couple of words there. So to be included in the budget for consideration, probably we could make that amendment.
Was that the intent, Madam CEO?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if I could also just to draw council's attention to the financial and resource implications portion of the report. The cost to operate a Grey Road 4 service, which is outside the grant, for the remainder of this year for 2020 is $30,000. The total cost for Grey Road 4 to take this out to the end of the granting period for including 2021 and 2022 is $280,000.
Right. Okay, so Madam Clerk, for clarity, do we need to then add that clarity in that motion as intended? I guess that's because it's moved by yourself, Councillor Millen, and seconded by Councillor Potter, this motion. We got clarity that the intention that it was including Grey Road 4, but now clarity says it's to be included for consideration in the 2021-22 budget, but it doesn't say that here. So we need to need some wordsmithing here. Madam Clerk? what
I
you
think
suggest?
that's the intent of the motion, was that it be included for council's consideration. So with the mover and seconder's permission, we could certainly make that change.
As a friendly amendment.
Yes, sir.
Okay, for consideration. Okay.
Mhm.
As long as everybody's clear on that motion, that's what the intent was. Councillor Millen, is that?
Well, I
your-
mean, I understand that's the intent of the motion, but my main concern remains that we're committing ourselves to unbudgeted funding for the Highway 4 route that is not funded through the grant system. And with the amount of uncertainty about ridership and the need for the system, it strikes me like we're trying to build the system before we even know whether it's sustainable on the other routes. My concern still remains about including Highway 4 route in the motion. So I'm looking to see if there's any support for separating that out from the main motion.
Okay, so just, and there's a couple other people want to speak to this, but just for process, Madam Clerk, then process on separating it. Because the motion's on the floor.
It would be a couple of steps in my mind, Mr. Warden. One would be to amend the second clause to remove the last portion after the transportation grant, and to separate out clause, I think that's clause 6, relating to Gray Road 4 operating from September to December 31st, and remove that out and have it separate that portion of the question.
So would that be an amendment? Because right now the motion is on the floor. So if there's a wish to separate, then we need a separate motion as an amendment to this motion.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's the process that's there. I just before I go there, I want to go back to Stephanie for just a quick minute on her conversation about Gray Road 4, because there was quite a descriptive about, talked about Hanover and Walkerton. Can you just reiterate your conversation about that Gray Road 4 portion, Stephanie?
Sure. Thank you, Warden McQueen. So one of the things I'd also like to touch on is, why is Gray Road 4 so expensive? Gray Road 4 is expensive because it's just in an odd area, in the sense that it has a lot more deadheading that needs to occur to get to our locations and back to kind of starting points. So in all the proposals and all the quotes that I've gotten throughout this entire time, Gray Road 4 has consistently been the higher cost, just for background and reference for council to know. But yes, the plan is to have a bus go from Durham, Hanover, Walkerton, with a connection into Flesherton a few times in that day, so that people can get to Owen Sound or Orangeville, or even continue on to Blue Mountains. It will ultimately bring them to Owen Sound, and they can choose to go to Guelph or wherever they'd like to go. So I think that connection into Flesherton is key, and that's the reason we're going Durham, Hanover, Walkerton, and connecting into Flesherton.
And just a question, is there a possibility to source out any separate granting with regards to that new proposal?
Thank you. I'm always open to looking for grants. At this time, I'm not sure if any additional funding is available, but I will always consider that.
Okay, I just wanted to add that clarity. So Councillor Millen, are you entertaining a separation of that? Because then I got two other people want to speak. I can come back to you. I got a couple other people want to speak to this.
Well, I guess my comment there would be, if no one is willing to second, and I guess I need to put the amendment on the floor to find whether there's a seconder. I'll throw it out there. I'll make the motion that, or I'll move that we amend the motion to remove the consideration of Highway 4 to be voted on separately, or however the clerk would like that voted on. Or
so just for clarity before I go, clarity, Madam Clerk, does that sound right, or is that?
Well, we'd have to do this in 2 phases, because the second clause speaks to Gray Road 4. And so if that were to be removed from the motion and voted on and be successful, then we could speak to clause number 6. But if, in my mind, if the motion to amend and remove that last line of clause 2 is lost, then it's council's wish that it be Gray Road 4 be included in there, and then clause 6 would be would remain. So I think we have to do it in 2 phases. We need to do an amendment to
Heather?
the second. Yes, Kim.
Is clause 2 deals with who the service provider is going to be.
Yes.
And I think clause 2 could be amended to simply speak to service provision in general.
Mhm.
And then the second part could be about specifically that aspect of the service
Mhm.
for Gray Road 4, if you follow me. So if council is supportive of the single source to driver's seat to provide the service, that's one decision. And then the second part of it is, what is the service? And so that's where the second decision is, about whether or not to include Gray Road 4 as part of the service.
Okay, so Madam Clerk,
I
help me
think
out
Kim
here.
and I are probably saying the same thing. It's just that it's, we would take out that last line just to single source to driver's seat then, and then we could separate out clause number 6 then as a separate, so we would still need to do it in 2 motions.
So just for clarity, back in March or whenever it was, when it was presented to County Council, there was a motion to look at the grade 4 corridor. What was that wording? Was that to investigate or to include? How was that wording from direction of a previous motion? Just maybe we need a reset. I just want to make sure we're following all the steps as we go along here. Just to.
So I will have to find those minutes. I don't have the wording in front of me.
Should we take a break?
We have
Sorry.
a motion on the floor. So
Can we take a recess during a motion? We can take a recess during a motion. No, I thought we could, if we have to get more information. Or I can wait. We can wait.
We can. Let me just.
Oh, that's March. I think it was it March, Stephanie? I'm not sure. It seems like a long time ago.
I believe it was May.
Oh, was it May? I thought we had it at when we were in the chamber. I thought, because I remember saying that.
Heather?
Go ahead.
Yes.
No, I apologize. That's not correct.
Okay. I'll keep looking here.
Because I remember being in the council chamber saying, just as everybody understands, once we go down this road, we're sort of committing ourselves as Grey County. And I remember talking about that, I'm sure, in the chamber. So it had to be before March or the end of February.
I attended that meeting and I think it was in February.
It was February. Because we wanted clarity about, then I think it came up once before, then later, that maybe that was the May that we could, whenever we could extend it. I think that was maybe when it came up then. Because something tells me it was to include.
No, would have been.
Because there was a presentation to County Council about the whole, and then I think there was an amendment to include Gray Road 4.
Randy Schertzer here. I think looks like January 9th, 2020.
Yes.
Be the whole, and it was motion CW 20-20. And looking at the wording there, I believe it's that further information be brought forward on an additional route along the Gray Road 4 corridor and the Wellington model.
Okay.
Thank you, Randy.
And
sorry, if I may, I believe.
Councilor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. If I may just interject, if my recollection is correct, and it could be wrong, the additional route was on the eastern side to go from Flesherton to Singhampton. I remember there was a fair amount of conversation on that segment because Gray Road 4 going west had already been identified as something we could do in a later stage, but the eastern portion wasn't identified at all.
And so if I'm not mistaken, and as I said, I could be, the motion that Director Churcher just referenced could be for the eastern portion rather than the western?
It
So
does speak to further information be brought forward on an additional route along Gray Road 4 corridor.
And that's the January 9th.
Minutes, yes.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to clarify that what that was saying. Okay. So this is, so then for clarity, then this motion today is bringing back that information. So now Councillor Millen is wishing to break that out. So Madam Clerk, in order to break that out, we got to look at the second paragraph first. Okay.
That's correct.
And that would, so how would that word? So this, we get the wording, so everybody's listening. And then I think Councillor Millen is moving that. I haven't seen a seconder yet, but Councillor Woodbury is going to second that. So there is intent now. The motion will survive. So how do we want to word that, Madam Clerk?
And that would be to remove the final part of the sentence after grant.
Okay, so grant period, transportation grant. And then the additional Gray Road 4 route between Durham, Hanover, and Walkerton will be a separate item that we will vote on separately.
And then we would go to clause 6 if the amendment. We would move to clause 6 and that clause 6 regarding Gray Road 4 route be separated from the main motion.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Millen, second by Councillor Woodbury, that section of the motion be removed. So then, so we need that. This is an amendment to that motion. So we need discussion on the
amendment only.
Amendment only. Okay. Councillor Millen, Councillor Woodbury, do you have anything to add to that motion?
Nothing to add that I haven't already spoke to, other than I think that it's enough of an additional commitment to the grant money that is not budgeted for, that I think we need to vote on it separately. So that's my intent here. It's not necessarily to eliminate Highway 4, but it is simply that we recognize that it's a separate commitment and over and above the grant money that we've received, so that we need to consider that separately. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Woodbury, do you have anything to add?
Mr. Warden.
I will get to other. I will get to. I just want to make sure the mover and seconder have any comments. Councillor
Yeah.
Woodbury.
Yeah, I just think with what's happened with COVID and money and this being a budget item and that, we should just look at it separately, and it is important, but I think we got to prioritize things too.
Okay, thank you. So I do have a number of people wish to speak, and I'm going to go to Councillor Robinson first, and then I think Councillor Swever wishes to speak. Is that correct?
And yes. Councillor Desai.
And Councillor Desai. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Robinson, and I'll keep a list here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thank you, Mr. Warden. I think this is an important step forward. I think it's a milestone for Grey County Council to support and commit to the Gray Road 4 corridor. It is Flesherton, Grey Highlands, it's Durham, West Grey, it's Hanover, and then the option, obviously, of going into Bruce County. It's connectivity for our Grey County residents. COVID, if anything, amplified the need for including a transportation support for our Grey County residents, and also for our businesses who will also need those individuals to be able to attend at their stores. So as a barrier, transportation is really a focus that we need to make as Grey County Council. So this is an important step forward. I think including the route of Gray Road 4 as a corridor in the transportation system right at the beginning, when Grey County is looking at this overall Grey County transportation system, is incredibly important. So I would look to my colleagues to support the Gray Road 4 corridor overall. Thank you.
Okay, so then I have, thank you, Councillor Robinson. I have Councillor Soever.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. So on the second paragraph, so do I understand that it's going to now read, and it's going to stop after the transportation grant?
That's correct.
Yes.
So if we approve that, even the proposal in the staff report exceeds the amount in the transportation grant, the sole source contract exceeds that by 70. So should we not be approving additional funding because if it's just in fulfillment of the transportation grant, then we're still short the money that's proposed, and that I think there's another $70,000 needed above the grant funding to start with.
So the question is we need a separate motion for that. So I guess I'll go to either Madam CEO or Stephanie.
I think what we were referring to in this part of the resolution was with regard to the scope of the service rather than the cost of the service. So we were contracting with Driver's Seat to provide the services as required by the grant from the province. So that's the 5 days a week, at least 2 trips, etc.
Mr. Warden, if I might.
Go ahead.
I am concerned about the single source agreement, particularly when we're only talking about the 10 passenger vans, because I don't really think a 10 passenger van gives a very good test of what our demand will be. I mean, we need, and as I mentioned earlier, there needs to be the flexibility to increase that capacity. And, you know, driving a bigger vehicle does not cost that much more than driving a small vehicle. Certainly there are some additional costs, but, you know, I would rather see a larger vehicle, especially on the 26 route, because, you know, there is really only, as I mentioned, one opportunity a day to go back and forth from the Blue Mountain to Owen Sound. So
Councillor Stoiber, just right now the discussion is on removing the Grey Road 4. I know you spoke to that in the original motion. Depending on where this goes, we can come back to that on the bigger part of the motion. And this is about regards to either removing the Grey Road 4 route. That's the discussion right now. That's the amendment to remove that part.
I thought we were talking about paragraph 2, which is to negotiate a single source agreement.
No. Right now, the amendment
is removing the.
Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So I don't think we should be separating the issue here. It's a larger issue of providing transportation within Grey County as a whole, and as such, I do oppose Councillor Milne's amendment on this. What I do also, I think I would like to see us put this or commit to this right through the end of 2022. At the end of the day, if the math adds up, and Councillor Bartnicki isn't here to oppose me on this, so that's a win for me. But it's about $90,000 a year, which is a little over 1/10 of a percentage point when it comes to budget time considerations. So I don't know why we're spending so much time debating 1/10 of a percentage point. Further to that, to counter Councillor Milne's point on, you know, we don't know what the ridership is going to be and so on and so forth. Well, honestly, the number of times we've done something and said, if we build it, they will come, why not apply that same logic to this? At the end of the day, if we have services available, it serves as a reason for people to move up to Grey County. It serves people do consider the services. If you look at real estate in Toronto, any housing that's close to a transit stop sells for a premium. It's considered to be a selling feature. So why not build a transit system that, you know, this is not even the final version of the transit system we want to see. I mean, there's still parts of Grey County that are underserved. So, you know, why not build as much as we can, connect all the municipalities as sort of getting people to move up here. The final argument I have is transit systems are used mainly by our most vulnerable populations. So especially given COVID-19 and what's happening around it, I think we need to ensure that our most vulnerable populations do have a way to get around the county and get to different services that they need to get to. And honestly, I think if someone who lives in Flesham needs to or wants to visit someone in Durham, a friend of theirs or such, I think that is a service that we should look into for a senior who can no longer drive or cannot afford to take a taxi cab. So I do oppose this amendment, and I hope that I find people who agree with me on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Desai. Next, I have
Mr. Warden, I have Councillor Hutchinson and Councillor Keaveney.
Okay, I saw. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Hutchinson.
Okay.
And Keaveney, I'll get you in a minute.
Thank you. I thought way back we had discussed with Stephanie through communication with the stakeholders, and we identified the need for this corridor, and that's why the discussion came forward. I think it's a very important corridor. I know West Grey, the connectivity just even into Hanover alone is very important, but going southbound, and again, the expansion of our communities. And that whole corridor is very important to me, and I am not going to support pulling it. I think it's something we need to do. And again, thank you, Councillor Desai, for your math there, but that was sort of where I was going too. It's, and I'm not checking you on that, but I agree with what you're saying there. But I think Steph had identified that need, or we wouldn't probably be where we are now. So I'm not in favor of pulling that. Thank you.
So, okay. Mr. Warden, yes. I have Councillor Body who's called point of order.
Yes, I saw that.
Okay, that the discussion has exceeded and gotten into the decision, and we do need to keep on track and just discuss the amendment, and that is the separating of clause 6 and the deletion of the last part of clause 2.
So with all due respect, could I challenge that point of order? We are still talking about the amendment. At least my arguments, and I believe Councillor Hutchinson's arguments were also related to that. So I would like to challenge that point of order.
So just hang on, guys. I'm going to go back. That we've consumed quite a bit of time here. So the question is, do we keep Grey Road 4 in, or do we take it out of the motion? Right. That's the point. So let's keep it condensed to that point. And I understand that this has become a very emotional conversation this morning, and so I want to keep moving along because we've got a lot to do today. So the point is, in or out, Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and please stop me then if my comments are off track. But I'd like to see the motion remain in its entirety. I think the Grey Road 4 corridor is important, and I'm thinking from the perspective of the 4 County Labour Market Planning Board and the SAO programs that are operated, and the need that I'm aware of through sitting on that board for the connectivity for people to move back and forth within that region. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Fleet, I think you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I have to oppose that too. I think Highway 4 is very important to Grey County. Like, we are one county. Maybe there'll be some funding from Bruce County, including Walker. But I think you got to look at the amount of manufacturers and businesses there are in the Fleshard, Durham, Hanover, Walker area that employ a lot of people, and people need transportation to get to work and from work. And I think it's very important to leave it in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for keeping your points to a concise point. Are there any other discussions about Councillor Potter?
Thank you, Warden, and yeah, I just would support keeping this in. I would oppose the amendment on the basis that this is an important corridor within the county, in my view. There are probably, I'm not living there, but I know that there are hospitals, there are doctors, and so there's an important need for people in that area to be able to move between these communities. I also see it in the long term, that in the future, having this portion already in place will make it much easier for us to connect up the dots to other parts. And I'm thinking coming up through Grey Highlands to the Blue Mountains, coming up to Meaford, to Markdale, etc. So I think there's a lot of value in doing this. If we find that it's not working, then we have the opportunity to dismantle it at that time.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Is there any other comments from county councilors that have maybe spoke with regards to the amended motion that's on the floor to pull out the Grey Road, the Grey 4 corridor? Madam Clerk, anything else out there?
See Councillor Mackey and I see Councillor Millen.
Councillor Mackey and then Councillor Millen, and then we'll get to a vote. Councillor Mackey?
Thanks, Warden, and certainly interesting discussion. I certainly understand Councillor Millen's standpoint in regards to the cost, but I think Grey County has decided to look at transportation in general. We're not sure at this point whether it will be successful. We hope it will be. But I do believe, in 2 years, we'll have we'll have all the ridership and we'll be able to make the decision at that point whether or not we continue. But I do think we need to invest. The county for Grey Road 4 corridor is important part for the county. I do hope, as Councillor Fleet mentioned, that there is continued contact with Bruce County, and I really hope that we're entering into their county, that there is some participation from them. I'm interested that the task force that we're going to be participating on their task force, because I see this as a great Bruce initiative, and this is the first start on it. So thanks.
Okay, thank you for those comments. So last comment, Councillor Millen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Warden. And just to clarify, I appreciate Councillor Body's recognition of the intent of the amendment. I recognize that the Highway 4 corridor is important, and that was the intent of my amendment, was to separate it out for the discussion that we've just spent 15 minutes on, which is wonderful, because now I know that everybody thinks it's important to have and fund. So that was the intent of my motion, and I thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Okay, thank you. And now we got to go to vote. So, Madam Clerk, how do we vote? Because I can't see everybody, and how do you wish to do this?
I have everyone up on my screen.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
So if you call.
Okay. All right. So those in favor, please raise your hand. Raise your hand. 1, 2,
3, 4. 4 that I count. 5 that I count.
So just for clarity, if you're in support of this, you're pulling it out. If you're opposed, you're leaving it in. Just want to get that clarity.
Correct.
Okay?
You're voting on the amendment only.
Right. Okay. Again, those in favor of the amendment. Okay. I can't see all the screen, so you keep track, Madam Clerk. Those opposed.
That motion is lost.
Okay. So, okay. Thank you very much for that, Madam Clerk. And to Councillor Mellon, it was a good discussion. All right. So we have then the original motion that was moved by Councillor Mellon and seconded by Councillor Potter. Any further discussion on items that haven't been raised already? Because I know we got to get moving on here.
Warden McQueen.
Mr. Warden?
So who's the voice?
Kim.
Sorry, Kim? Madam CEO, sorry.
Just to close a little bit of the discussion that's been raised by Councillor Soever, 2 things. One, we had to base some of the planning for this on our prior experience with ridership. And council will recall that with the earlier programs, our ridership started off quite low. So we wanted to use that experience and make sure that we were conservative in our estimates. But we also know that driver's seat does have access to larger 24-seat vehicles should we need to, expand the capacity of the system.
Thanks for that clarity, Madam CEO. And I will go back to Councillor Soever because he did raise that before, and then I got Councillor Robinson and Councillor Potter. Councillor Soever, any further up from that conversation, that comment that you raised?
No, I just want to make sure that we do have the capacity to expand, because we have had some experience with transportation pilots in the project we run with Collingwood and Wasaga Beach, which brings people to the village from those communities. And when the schedule was limited and the capacity was small, then people didn't use it. Once we upped the schedule so that it became more practical for people, then all of a sudden ridership went up. And then when people heard other people were using it, then it went up even further. And I think this year, I think we've had a 30% increase again in ridership. So it's true. You know, a pilot will only work if it, you know, has the capacity and the schedule to meet people's needs. And then I have one question more on the sole sourcing. When you do the math on the thing, the total cost is listed as 2.58 million, of which only about 1.9 million is direct operation, according to the table here. So I would just like to know, where does the other $600,000 being spent?
Who's good at math? Madam CEO or Stephanie, do you have a comment there? Or maybe even Kevin. I'm not sure.
Stephanie has the spreadsheets in front of her, perhaps, or
Yeah, I can just, I don't have the detail if Kevin would like to jump in on detail, but in general, the reason that you do see a discrepancy in the total budget as opposed to what you're seeing in front of you today is there are some additional expenses that are not included in there. For example, staff wages, marketing, and advertising. So just a few additional costs like that, which are not included in what you see in front of you.
Okay, thank you. I note that that's 25% of the operations budget, so of the total budget, so it seems a little high on the overhead part, but anyway, thank you.
Okay. Well, that it certainly has been noted for sure, and I know Kevin is pretty careful on his numbers too. So, okay, so I got now Councillor Robinson and Councillor Potter. I'll try to keep.
Thanks, Mr. Warden, and through you, just on paragraph 6 of the motion, I just want clarity with regard to the 2021-2022 budget deliberation. So will be part of that, or is it committed within those 2 budget years?
So, Madam Clerk, sort of, it was clarity was this motion is covering it to the end of December, that 2021-2022 be included in the annual budget for consideration. Is that clear? Yeah. So it's to be considered during this budget process the next 2 years.
Thanks.
So it's not guaranteed, it's to be considered. Okay. Okay. Thanks for that clarity as well. Okay, Councillor Potter.
I just, I'm probably echoing Councillor Swever, but I do recall it when the first bus program started in the town of Thornbury, taking people to the mountain. For the first 3 weeks, they had nobody or one person riding. It took a while to build up, and as they found their legs and they found the right times, the right routes, and so on, the ridership built up, and it's been growing ever since. So it will take time for this to get going, but I think we have to give it a chance, or not do it at all. But I think if we're going to do it, we have to give it a chance to succeed.
Right. Okay. Madam Clerk, do I have anybody else wish to speak?
No, sir.
Okay. So the motion is on the floor. It has been moved by Councillor Mellon, second Councillor Potter. Lots of discussion. Anybody opposed to this motion? Hearing none, it's carried. Okay. So our delegation that was scheduled for 10:30, now it's 11:25. I was going to say we need a break, but I think we should do our scheduled delegation first, and then we can look at taking a break. So are they on the line or available, Madam Clerk?
Yes, they are on. Rob?
So
just moving them in now to speak.
Okay, so they will be joining momentarily.
So this is Tim Allen and Dave Ernest with regards to the Dufferin Gray ATV Club, and they have as a scheduled delegation with regards to the extension of the side-by-side to the trail system.
That's correct. And we do have staff on hand to answer any questions, including Randy, Stephanie, and Morgan Berry from Gray Sobel, who is on contract with us for the trails.
Great, thank you. So Mr. Allen and Mr. Ernest is are included now. Are they ready to go? You out there, Mr. Allen?
I was. Yep. Here I am.
Yep, we can see you now, Tim.
Okay, well, welcome, and I apologize for the delay. We had some good discussion on a previous motion here, and that can happen sometimes at county council. So not to take any more time, I will pass it over to you, Mr. Allen and Mr. Ernest.
Greetings, council. We appreciate that you have a very busy job where you are, so we will try and make this quick as possible. With me today is Dave Ernest. He is our club membership coordinator. He is also the Ontario Federation of ATV Club representative for our district. This is a 4-year-old request. We were stalled for 3 years by the trail strategy study, and the planning trails department did address a few of the requests that we had at that time. And one of those requests was extension to County Road 18. The other request was suggesting a 54-inch gate opening and approval for 54-inch side-by-sides, as side-by-sides are not permitted on the Grey County CP Trail or Harkaway Forest. So with all due, I think we'll get started here. First screen, please. Request to allow side-by-sides on designated ATV trails. Side-by-sides are classed as ATVs under Ontario Regulation 31603. A number of descriptions apply. Side-by-side, recreational off-road vehicle, utility terrain vehicle. Depending on the intended application, they are designed for recreation, sport, or utility. Key points about them are they are limited to a maximum 1,000 cc's. They have a steering wheel, 4 or more wheels, and seating to accommodate 1 to 4, including driver and passengers. Equipped with seat belts and a rollover protective structure. Some of the utility models do not have ROPS. For example, the 5-wheel John Deere Gator. So there's 5 different class sizes. The total width of the vehicle could be 50-inch, 55, 60, 65-inch, or 72, measured outside the wheels for sport recreation and outside the body for utility. Next slide, please. And here we have a picture of 4 of the classes. So on your right, we have a 50-inch, we have a 55-inch, a 60-inch, and a 65-inch. Next slide, please. And here's some good-looking fella standing beside the most preferred size, which is 65 inches. On the left of the screen is a Yamaha 1000 cc, and you can see by the width of the machine. On the right of the screen is a Arctic Cat 1000 cc 4-seater. Next screen, please. And here's a comparison to a straddled ATV. It's a pretty stocky guy standing beside all those machines, so that'll give you an indication as the width of the machines. Next slide, please. The CP Trail, how wide is it? The railway used 8-foot timber ties under the steel rails, supported by 2.5 to 3 feet of fill on either end of the ties. Once the rail and ties were removed, the surface left was approximately 14 feet wide. Subsequent gradings of the raised bed have widened the surface, and I believe it's been graded approximately 3 times since 2006, 2007. The current bed width varies from 16 to 18 feet. Posts, so once the rail was lifted, the Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Clubs used the trail for a number of years before county took it over. The posts used to support the former OFSC farm gates that were 16 feet long, averaged 16 feet center to center, a 17-foot outside measurement approximately. These posts remain as signposts and are actually on top of the raised portion of the trail. While stone dust screenings, Grey County has nicely dressed up the trail with stone dust. It's been applied in many parts of the trail. The stone dust is only applied to a width of 8 to 10 feet. Next slide, please. And here's that dapper young fella measuring the trail. So that trail right there, that is on the road that John Steele is on. That trail there measured 17 feet across the bed. Next slide, please. And here's the measurement of the gates. You can see the 16-foot mark in the tape measure. Next slide, please. So here's a picture of the gate posts and the trail gates. Let me rephrase that, the signposts and the existing trail gates. And it illustrates the usable width of the bed. Behind the gates, you will see that the grass is cut. And I believe that part was actually cut with a lawnmower. And if you'll notice, it's not sloping off. It's reasonably flat. So there's a whole lot of trail there available to use. Next slide, please. CP Trail property gates. A new design. Previous gate designs were limiting in all season use on the CP multi-use trail. The purpose to keep larger gates off the trail, larger vehicles off the trail, as that was undesirable. In about 2008 or 2009, a new version of gate was adopted. The gate is actually a cattle stanchion or cattle divider from the dairy industry. They are very robust and adaptable. Each gate is a two-piece design with a post and swinging removable head. It's lockable in 3 positions: closed, which is inward, 90 degree, which is parallel with the trail, or a full 180 degrees open. And it's put in that position in the wintertime for the OFSC trail groomer. In 2015, the DGATV Club purchased and installed through Ontario Trails Coalition grant 31 sets of gates from Dundalk to 80 Side Road north of Markdale. Next slide, please. And here's some pictures of the gates. To your left is the gate heads. And you may notice down on the bottom corner, that is where the pin goes through and the padlock goes on to keep anyone from opening the gates. And of course, the post and the form for the concrete pillar, which at that time was upgraded to a 2-foot by 2-foot by 4-foot deep pillar to keep people from moving the gates and to keep frost from heaving them. Next slide, please. Volunteers with Drive. With county's approval, DGATV hired a contractor and our volunteers jumped in to help out. The club installed 31 sets in 4 days through varying weather conditions, snow, driving rain, and eventually sun. The club subsequently signed over the ownership to Grey County, as was previously agreed upon. The DGATV Club is open to such a proposal again. Next slide, please. And here's the gate project and the weather conditions. The picture in the center is the Monday that we started out. The picture to your left in the yellow rain suit is the pouring rain that we got, I believe, Tuesday and Wednesday. And the picture on your right is volunteers cleaning up the final details with the new gates. Next slide. Gate opening width. Gates installed over the years were a standard opening of 52 inches. Some variables to this have been affected by fiber optic, gas lines, and other power cables crossing the trail. Frost has played a major role in heaving gates. The earlier gates had a smaller pillar. Many gates have sustained damage. A few clipped from the OFSC trail groomer. It's very difficult to keep the groomer straight behind the tractor when there's snow drifts to go through. But most of the locals and farm vehicles dismayed they cannot get through to a field or a woodlot. We feel a larger opening may reduce damages to these gates. Next slide, please. The EMS, Emergency Medical Service, police, and fire utilize side-by-sides. The side-by-sides are indispensable tools to all those emergency services. Most are using 65-inch, fully equipped for multiple uses. Stopping to open gates is a loss of valuable time in trail emergencies or brush fire. In that picture, we have West Gray's police side-by-side. He is in the middle of a trail. The ATV on the side is off the travel portion of the trail just to demonstrate how wide the trail actually is. Please remember, there's that much room on the other side of that machine, police machine. Next slide. Gate stats. We did some measuring back in the spring, and we took readings of all the damages and what's going on with the gates. And right now we have gates that are narrower than 65 inches with access around. There are 33. Now you must remember, the EMS equipped side-by-sides can't get around those gates. They're heavily laden with equipment, a sprayer tank, gurney, whatever else is needed. They prefer to stay on level ground, whereas a sport ATV side-by-side is unencumbered by extra weight, can get around the gate no problem with on level ground. The number of gates that are 54 inches or less are 2. Gates with a 65-inch opening or larger, there are 19. OFSC farm gates still in place, there are 3 remaining. And gates missing, we are missing 4 farm gates. We have no idea where they went. There are 7 locations with no gates at all. And we have 13 gates that have been damaged by impact and other things. And we have about 23 gates that are heaved or lifted from frost and people trying to bore their way through them. Next slide, please. Here's a picture of some of the damage we've encountered on the gates. Your left picture is the old style pillar where the frost has literally heaved it right out of the ground. The picture on your right is somebody obviously wanted through that gate in a and chose to actually cut the gate open to get to the lock to cut it off. Next slide, please. So it's a twofold request. While the club is asking permission to allow trail access for side-by-sides up to 65 inches, we also request that gate openings be set for 65, as it appears it would be the least expensive alternative to bringing gates up to standards, with many already at that width. And the club is willing to contribute resources to assist with this. It is expected the wider opening will reduce damages and yet still restrict automobiles from entering the trail system. Next slide. Closing statement. The side-by-side market has far exceeded conventional ATVs. The thriving market drives local economies and small town businesses. Adaptation to include this type of tourism driver only benefits our local economies. In 2015, a study revealed ATVing at 7.2 billion nationally, which was 0.4 billion behind snowmobiling. Ontario's portion alone was 9 million in tourism benefits. Today, ATVing has surpassed snowmobiling and has a projected 30% growth since 2015, and is now considered one of the leading economic tourism drivers of all the motorsports. Next slide, please. And we'd like to thank you for taking the time to hear our presentation. And the little fellow there that was out for a ride with his parents, he thanks you too. And we're open for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Allen. And does Dave Ernest, does he have anything to add before we go to questions or comments from County Council? Or maybe he's there for answering questions.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. It's just, there's a lot, I've been getting a lot of calls, being that our trail coordinator has resigned his post, so I've been taking a lot of those calls. And a lot of people are, the first question they ask is my side-by-side allowed on all your trails? When we explain that the rail trail and Harkaway Forest is off limits to them, they have the tendency to go somewhere else for vacations or just for the day out with their family. Most of the people buying side-by-sides right now are mom and dad, their kids out on the trails.
Okay, so just to clarify, your request is to increase the width size on the rail trail from 54 or 55 to 65 inches. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and just before I go to questions, just for clarity, you're saying only 2 openings on the rail trail now are at 54, and the other openings are much larger?
Yes.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Warden, the fact that allowing side-by-sides on the trails is part of the question, part of the request, but allowing side-by-sides up to 65 inches. And it's very, one of the key points is that the emergency vehicles and police have to stop at each gate, and these gate undo a padlock to pull the pin out to open the gate. It's very, very time consuming for them. And under the stress of response right away to get to an incident, it makes it more difficult for them to get through faster. It's something we would like to see to help them out too.
Okay, thank you. And I guess before I go to questions to council, are there any comments or questions from staff before I go to County Council for comments or questions?
I see Randy's joined us, Warden McQueen.
Okay, Randy, do you have any comments before we go to County Council for comments?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Warden McQueen. And I just want to thank Tim and Dave for their presentation, and want to thank also for the Dufferin Gray ATV Club for their assistance over the years to help improve the overall CP Rail Trail through gate improvements and other projects as highlighted by Tim. Committee may recall that a recreational trails master plan was approved by council late last year. And as part of the recreational trails master plan, it introduced evaluation criteria for new requests, either on existing trails or for new trails, both on the CP rail trail and in county forest properties. So if committee is interested, staff would recommend that committee direct staff to bring back a report regarding the requests presented here today. We could do some further research regarding what could be considered on the CP rail trail. Tim's raised some good points with respect to making sure that emergency responders are able to access the trail in a timely fashion so we can connect with them and get some of their comments and feedback. And we can bring that back in a fulsome report for council. And this will just provide further information for council to consider prior to providing a recommendation or further direction on what should be considered in the updated agreement between the county and Dufferin Gray ATV Club. So, because ultimately that's what we're working towards is an updated agreement with the club and recognizing what could be considered and permitted on the CP rail trail. So that's what staff would recommend at this stage. If community is interested, is we would get direction to bring back that report and have that more information about this topic.
Okay, Randy, thank you for that. I have Councillor Millen, I see, and others that wish to speak. So I'll start with Councillor Millen and maybe Councillor Robinson after that. I'll go ahead, Councillor Millen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Tim and Mr. Ernest, for the presentation. I would fully endorse having staff bring back a report. I think there's a lot of upside to having side-by-sides up to 65 inches, as has been described, on our trails, or at least considered by council for our trails, without knowing what all the ramifications might or might not be from staff. So, Mr. Warden, would you like a motion for that, or do you just want to give? Okay, I'll make a motion that we ask staff to bring back a a report on the presentation.
Yep, I'll sub that motion and
I'll second that, Mr. Warden.
Okay, so there's a motion seconded by Councillor Robinson for a report, and you're suggesting that you support the 65 inches, Councillor Millen, but you want that report to come back and then you make that decision when it comes back.
Absolutely, yes, that would be fine. Yeah, sure.
Okay, just it's always nice to give some staff some direction if it's possible, right? So,
well,
okay.
Yeah, if you want direction, just tell them, yeah, we'll allow it. Let's go. If that's if that's what you want, let's do it. Let's go. But
well, staff's is suggesting a report. I mean, council has the ultimate decision, but bringing a report back will probably give a fulsome prescriptive report of the points that have been raised today and maybe others, and probably from the public. There was a public process, I think, also. So I'm going to go to Councillor Robinson next, who's a seconder, and then I'll go to others. I think Ian's on there as well.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Certainly the delegation is timely. Citizens have been talking about this since the last master trail plan had been introduced. So looking at the gates in terms of improved access, I think is extremely timely, and I'm happy to I'm happy to second that motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, I think I saw Councillor Boddy, is that correct?
Councillor Boddy and Councillor Mackey.
Very good. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Boddy.
Yeah, thanks. I've now ridden my bicycle to south of Markdale on the trail, and what I've noticed is where the gates are a little bit tight, people are going around them anyway, which is doing damage, so it'd be better to have them on the trail. I also know when I run into other ATVs, when I'm on my bike, they slow down. There's great cooperation with people using the trails. So, you know, part of that fear of trying to protect the rail for bicyclers and for runners, it isn't really there in practical terms. So I support getting a report back and going from there. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you, Councillor Boddy, and Councillor Mackey.
Thank you, Warden McQueen, and I would certainly support, and I was going to move for second. I'm glad that other councillors beat me to it, but I would certainly support a report coming back. There is a lot of tourism that's involved with side-by-sides, and number of seniors that may not be able to enjoy the rail trail without a side-by-side enjoy getting it out. So I would certainly welcome the report. I'd just like to remind council that and planning staff that we've allowed the township of Chatsworth fire trucks to be able to drive down the rail trail. So I suspect there's ample room for a 65-inch ATV. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Any other comments out there from County Council? So there's a motion on the floor that a report will come back. I guess going back to you, Randy, time frame. We have a willing body, really looking at to fix some of these gates. Looks like it's time that we need to do some repairs. What's your time frame on a report?
Yeah, thank you, Warden McQueen. And on some of the items that Tim has highlighted in his presentation, and as the clerk mentioned, Morgan is from Grace Salt on the call too. So they've already flagged some of the items too that Tim has highlighted in terms of some improvements that need to be made or some repairs need to be made to the gate. So we'll be working with Grace Salvo to do that. And if the club is willing to participate, that'd be great too. And with respect to the staff report, because there's only one meeting in August, it likely won't be until September until we can bring that report forward. But that's where staff would aim to bring that report forward in September.
Okay, thank you. I think Tim mentioned he's been working on this for 4 years.
Yes.
So any other comments from County Council? Just a question to you, Tim, in the sense of ATV or side-by-sides. I understand the recreational vehicles are sold out. They're hard to come by. Is that true?
Yes, it is. The dealerships are selling out. They can't keep them in stock.
I guess it's all about that staycation in Ontario. So there you go. All right.
Yes.
So there's no other discussion on the floor. It was moved by Councillor Millen, second by Councillor Robinson, that a report will come back probably in the September timeframe. Anybody opposed to that motion? Hearing none, that is carried. Well, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Allen and Mr. Ernest. Stay tuned and maybe get your shovels and your cement trucks and everything ready to rip and rear and ready to go.
We certainly will. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
All right, have a good day. Madam Clerk, we're looking at, I got 7 minutes till 12. We haven't taken a break. We should probably take a break. I don't know, Mr. Body might not make that golf tournament or golf by noon. I guess you could always leave, I suppose. But what's your wish? Do we take what do you want? 15-minute break? Do you want to take a half-an-hour break? What's your wish?
Whatever council's wish is, we can break for lunch now and come back in 30 minutes.
So looking at our agenda, we have, there's a few items on there. We've got the Hanover Task Force. We have to decide that. Fees and services bylaw update, Davenport subdivision. Yeah, there's a few things on there. So
yes.
What's for lunch, Madam Clerk?
Pardon me?
What's for lunch?
Yeah. Sorry.
What?
Did you not get your order in for this morning, Councilor?
Well, I'm sure somebody bought pie, likely somewhere. No.
Yeah, you must be in a different dimension right now, because we all are in that different dimension right now. So let's take a break till 25 after 12. Does that sound fair? Can everybody do that? And we'll come back, and please put your devices on mute and off camera so we don't hear what you're eating for lunch. And we'll see you at 25 after 12. Madam Clerk, are we good to go back?
Mr. Warden, it's Michael here. Heather's just going to be rejoining in a moment, I think.
Okay, I'll give her just a couple, and then we have Rob. Rob's the guy who puts it back on live. Enjoyable lunch. I'm certainly you had a good opportunity to have a great lunch. All right, so moving on to our agenda, we're on item B on our committee of the whole, and this is with regards to the Hanover Own Sound Task Force terms of reference, and I have that moved. Hang on, I had it here. That's moved by Councillor Patterson and Councillor O'Leary. So it's on the floor. Madam Clerk, who's taken over in this? Who brought this forward?
That would be me.
Okay, There you go. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Mr. Warden. So the Hanover Owen Sound Task Force was created after a notice of motion was brought forward by Councillor Hicks, and subsequently that motion was supported by Council. The task force will focus on analyzing issues related to the overall economic development and social conditions of our two urban areas in Grey County, while also looking at the impact to Grey County as a whole. Items such as labor force, social issues and supports, transportation, and affordable housing will be the vital lenses that will be looked at during this review. The goal is to address opportunities and areas of concerns that will again benefit all of Grey County, including the two urban areas. The terms of reference before you recommend a task force of 5 members, including 1 from each of Hanover and Owen Sound, along with the warden. The task force, as noted in the notice of motion, will be a short-lived one with no more than 8 months of discussion. And everything will flow through, back through Council and Committee of the Whole. Councillors Hicks and O'Leary have indicated their desire to sit on the task force as representatives of Hanover and Owen Sound, respectively. At the request of the Clerk's Department, councillors were asked to submit their names if they were interested in sitting on this task force. To date, I have 6 councillors who are interested in sitting on this task force for 2 positions. Those councillors are Councillors Burley, Carlton, Desai, Millen, Robinson, and Soever. There are only 2 positions currently available on the task force, and should everyone wish to have their name stand, then we will require an election, and it will be by show of hands. If there is an election, then each member will have a very short opportunity to speak as to why they would like to serve on this committee, and then a vote would take place. So before we get to that, I just want to know if there are any questions from council on the report or the terms of reference before we get into the membership.
So just for clarity, Madam Clerk, before I go there, so the motion that's on the floor is supporting the terms of reference as written.
That's correct.
And that the following members be appointed to the hand. So is that a separate motion, or is it?
No, we'll fill in the blanks of the other 2 once those are voted on.
Okay, so it's just sort of an open, okay. All right, so Councillor O'Leary, you have your hands up.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I just wanted to ask the clerk, when we originally did this, they were asking for one of Mayor Body and myself and one of the 2 in Hanover. Was there a reason why they didn't want a mayor and deputy mayor on that? And the reason I'm asking is because both have put their name in Georgian Bluffs.
So, Madam Clerk.
All right, there was no reason. It was, we asked for representatives from each of Owen Sound and Hanover. That happened to be yourself and Councillor Hicks. And then the call for membership was open to any other council member who wanted to put their name forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so any questions on the terms of reference before we go to
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Christine Robinson here.
Oh, okay, sorry, you're on a different screen, so go ahead. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Warden, I was wondering if there was an opportunity to expand the membership within the terms of reference. Seeing that there was only 2 additional members, there's a overwhelming interest in this committee. I'm wondering if there is an opportunity to expand committee membership prior to an election taking place.
So maybe I'll go back to the author of the task force first then, Madam Clerk.
So through you, Mr. Warden, this task force is short-lived and it is focusing on very specific items that are related to the 2 urban areas and its impact on Grey County as a whole. It's just my experience that a smaller task force can deal with those in a fairly efficient and expedient manner because of the short time frame that was included in that motion of being no more than 8 months, it's my recommendation that it stay at 5, but certainly that is council's prerogative to amend those as they see fit.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Going back to you, Councillor Robinson. Any further follow-up with the explanation?
Well, thank you through you to the clerk, and I completely understand the rationale. I'm looking to county colleagues if there's a willingness to expand the membership or not. So I'll just throw it out there, as it were. Okay,
I see Mayor Councillor Soever. You, sorry, I only have a screen, so I may be missing somebody but I'll recognize Councillor Soever, and I'll swing my screen to see if there's anybody else. Go ahead, Councillor Soever.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm in full support of Mayor Robinson's proposal to increase the task force. I think maybe by 2 to 7. We have a council here of 7 people, and it doesn't slow us down at all. Because if you note in the terms of reference, at point 2, under the objectives, it talks for the benefit of the 2 municipalities and the county as a whole. So I do feel that to live up to that second point in the terms of reference, we should have a broader representation from across the county rather than just the area right immediate to Owen Sound and Hanover.
Okay, thank you for that. However, I think I have Councillor Desai next, I think. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Go ahead, Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So I would support I would support the clerk's recommendation to stay at 5. I think it's very prudent. A smaller body is able to be more efficient. Having said that, I do take Councillor Sever's points well that we do have council of 7, but Southgate has a council of 5, if I'm not mistaken, and they're living the dream clearly. So maybe 5 is better than 7. But I think I do take the clerk's comments very well, that it is a smaller body. It needs to be efficient, quick, and this is not about limiting debate, because any recommendations still have to come back to council or to committee to sort of pass and then come to fruition. So I think if we could limit or minimize the number of people around the table at the task force level, it allows the task force to be a lot more agile and a lot more efficient in terms of time, and especially with an 8-month turnaround, these things would be very important for the task force to be able to do. So I would support keeping it to 5. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Carlton. Oh, sorry, Madam CEO, did you want to go first? Then I'll go.
2 things. One, further to the point that Councillor Desai just made, I do think it's important to note that everything that would be discussed at this task force would have to come back to County Council for a full discussion. The second thing that we have been running into more and more, especially as we try to move things back into a more regular schedule, is how challenging it is to schedule people's time. And we now have 13 different committees and task forces, and it gets pretty tough to the more people that you add to something, the more challenging it is to try and find a time that works for everyone. So that was part of the discussion that the clerk and I had about how can we make sure that this can actually, we can have the discussions that need to happen and to do it efficiently in that short period of time.
Okay, thank you, Madam CEO. And I'll go back now to Councillor Carlton. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I hear what the CAO and clerk are saying. I tend to agree with Councillor Robinson and Soever, though, that it would be nice to have input from more of the county into both of these areas with Owen Sound and Hanover. So that's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wish to speak? Certainly, if there's a desire to change the number, you have to put a motion forward and do that.
I see Councillor Burley's hand up.
Yeah, that was just going to, thank you, Madam Clerk. Councillor Burley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. When the clerk put the call out for members to sit on this committee, I put my name forward along with my deputy mayor, Sue Carlton. I will withdraw my name and leave Councillor.
So that means 5.
Let her go ahead with the proceedings. And I just wanted to have representation next to our neighbors to support them and have discussions with them. But I will withdraw my name.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Burley. So that puts down, Madam Clerk, that names down to 5.
5. And I see Councillor Desai wishes to speak again.
Okay, Councillor Desai, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure who spoke right before Councillor Burley, but the point was made that it would be nice to have more representation from council on the task force where these decisions are made. I would submit that there is representation from council or committee when the task force brings recommendations back. At that point, all 18 of us will be sitting around the table discussing this item and talking it over for whatever length of time it takes. So I don't see that as an appropriate argument. And in fact, to me, I find that it speaks of a lack of trust to a certain extent. And I'm sure that was not the intent for whoever spoke. But I think whoever does get onto that committee or task force, I would trust them to bring recommendations back, which they would then be open if it was the wish of council to change, that they would be open to accepting that wish of council and having that larger debate at council as well. Thank you, Mr.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Desai. And I think I have Councillor Robinson again. I don't know.
Yep.
Go ahead, and then there's, okay, go ahead, Councillor Robinson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Warden. I would like to put a motion forward for Grey County Council to expand the membership, the council representation component of the membership on this committee by one additional member of council. I think that's really important. It's evident there's a lot of interest in this particular task force. I think we're all of the opinion that we're ready to hit the ground running and work very diligently within the 8 months. So having an additional member of council, I think, would be prudent. And we have precedent. We've done this before, and I'd be very pleased if there's a seconder and also support from County Council. Thank you.
Okay, there's an amendment to the motion to amend it to include 6 members versus 5. Is there a seconder for that?
I will be happy to second that. It's Councillor Potter.
Okay. So moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Potterson. Potter. Sorry about that, Councillor Potter. And just before I go to questions, Madam Clerk, you had it at an odd number. Does it matter if we go up to 6? Is that an issue with even number, Madam Clerk?
I wonder.
No, it's not.
I wondered, were we going to 6 or to 7 for total membership?
I think Councillor Robinson spoke about adding 1 member, so that would be 6.
Yeah, that is correct.
So, and I don't know if everybody's noticing, we're having a little bit of a freeze frame going on here. Okay, so the motion moved for Robinson's that we move up to a number of 6. Councillor Stoever, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, yeah, I'm happy to support that, but I'm just wondering if 7 might be a better number, because at 6, there's a tie vote is lost, so it could be that's not an ideal situation when a tie vote is lost, because it inhibits the ability to move forward.
I could agree to that, Mr. Warden.
Yes, I would agree too.
Okay.
So, as I'm understanding it, Councillor Robinson is wishing to change it from 6 members to 7 members.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, 7. And Councillor Potter, are you seconding that then?
Yes. I guess I'm good with that.
So, Madam Clerk, just before I proceed, I am having some internet issues with people freezing on my screen. I'm in the county building. Is anybody else experiencing some slowness in the internet? Oh.
Not in chambers here, no.
I'll yell down the hall and ask if our CAO if we paid our bill. Maybe we haven't paid our bill.
I turned off my video to see if that would make it better.
Oh, so you're experiencing it too, Madam CAO?
Absolutely, I am.
Okay. All right. Well, if I happen to lose my video, I'm still here, guys. All right. So the motion on the floor is to change it from 5 to 7. Debate on the amendment to the motion. Any discussion on moving it to 7 from 5?
I see Councillor Millen has a question.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Millen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I think the clerk's advice is well taken here, and the CEO's advice as well. It just strikes me that the more committees we have, the more people on those committees, the more time it takes, the more resources it takes to get those people together, get their information to them, get a decision out of them, and come back to county council. Why not just have the discussion here at the council meeting? I mean, it makes no sense to have committees that are populated by at least half of the council and then have a report to council. Like, let's just have the discussion at the council. Unless you have a small committee. In this case, it's a very focused mandate to bring a report back to county council. I think a small group consisting of the representatives from the 2 respective municipalities plus 2 other councillors is quite sufficient. Those are my remarks, Mr. Mayor or Mr. Warden, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you for those points, Councillor Millen.
Mr. Warden, I have Councillor Robinson, Desai, and Potter, and so ever.
So Councillor Robinson, Desai, Potter, and so ever. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you. We certainly have had this type of opinion from our CAO and clerk before in terms of the terms of reference composition, total number for members of council. But this council has also determined that they wish to increase representation of members of council on various committees or working groups or task force. And I think this is a really good example where county council can show support of those individuals, those members of council that wish to put their time, effort, and expertise forward to serve on this task force for a duration of 8 months. So I would be looking to county council members to support that. We're all ready to go on this committee. Let's have the vote and let's get working on this task force.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So I feel, in all fairness, if we are going to increase the number of members on the task force, we have to extend the time limit of the task force. You can't do one without making allowances on the other. As I said, with more members, there will be more debate. There will be more difficulty in scheduling meetings. So do we ask members to prioritize the task force? And what happens if they can only meet 4 times over the 8 months? All of a sudden, we're not having a fulsome discussion. So we either have a small, agile body that can meet frequently and make these recommendations, or we extend the time period. We cannot, as the famous saying goes, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Desai. Councillor Potter, and then Councillor Surratt.
I think a bigger choir sounds a lot better. The more voices you hear, the more chance you have to get things right, the more chance you have to hear from the whole county. And I think that's what we're trying to do here. This is meant to be a county-wide initiative, and I think we need as many voices at the table as possible, as many thoughts. I don't think it means that it will take longer. I think that we're all responsible. We all have council meetings and we all are busy. But I think that it is possible for this to be done with a slightly larger. We're not talking about a massive group here. We're just talking about adding a couple more people, which means a couple more areas of the county being involved in this.
Okay, thank you for that. Councilor Schweber.
I would hope that Councillor Desai's comments about a small agile body doesn't mean that he's excluding himself and myself from still being members on this committee. But I know that, you know, we can still get the work done. Certainly 8 months is a long time, and, you know, I consider the job that I have full time. So I think there won't be a problem in getting the job done. And knowing Councillor Desai and my own propensity for asking questions and a lot of detail at council and committee of the whole meetings, I would hope that the larger contingent, we would be much better informed when we show up at county council, so that county council could address the recommendations of the task force more quickly, because at least the members of the task force would have had a lot of insight into what went on and how the request to county council was developed. So we would not have the same amount of questions at county council, and then the council meetings would act in a much more efficient manner.
Okay, lots of debate here. Keep it clean, everyone. That's good. So I have, I think, who was I have Councillor Patterson. I think you're next. Go ahead, Councillor Sue.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm in favor of a committee of 5, just because it is more efficient, and I think it is sufficient to handle this discussion. And I expect the broader discussion to take place in front of all of County Council. Let the smaller committee do their job and bring the information back to all of us, so we all receive it at the same time, not smaller, larger committee making decisions for what County Council should be making. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there anybody else that hasn't spoke wish to speak? Not hearing anyone. So basically, Ian's missing his golf game here. So, oh, sorry.
Councillor Clump.
Sorry, Councillor Compass. Sorry, I had to switch the screen there. Go ahead, Councillor Compass.
Thanks so much, Mr. Warden. And I too am in favor of a task force of 5. I think that this is an efficient way to look at this issue and to bring it back to the decision-making body, which is full council, for fulsome discussion. I think all of the voices at the table occurs at the county level, and I think that in compliance with comments from the clerk and the CAO, ranging schedules for these meetings can be problematic. So my vote goes with 5.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Klumpus. Anybody else wishes to speak? If not, we're voting on the amendment to go from 5 to 7. Okay.
Mr. Warden, I'd like a recorded vote on this.
Okay. So a recorded vote is being requested. So I guess, Madam Clerk, because it's a recorded vote, it'd be a weighted vote. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, we don't have a way to have a recorded vote without a weighted vote, just in the sense of keeping track of everyone. So I'll leave it up to you to do the duty, please.
Thank you, sir. So just as a reminder, you are voting on the amendment, moving it from a task force of 5 to a task force of 7. Councillor Mackey.
No.
Councillor Gamble. Councillor Gamble.
I can go to the hall and.
Sorry. No.
No? Okay. Councillor Burley.
Against.
Against. Councillor Carlton.
For.
I'm sorry?
For.
4, thank you. Warden McQueen,
In favor.
in favor. Councillor Desai,
Opposed.
Councillor Patterson,
Against?
Councillor Fleet,
I'm against.
thank you. Councillor Clumpus,
Against?
Councillor Keaveney,
In favor.
Councillor Body,
Opposed?
Councillor O'Leary,
Against.
Councillor Woodbury,
Opposed.
Councillor Millen,
Nay.
Councillor Soever,
In favor.
Councillor Potter,
In favor.
Councillor Robinson,
In favor.
Councillor Hutchinson.
In favor.
The motion is lost, 39 to 51.
Okay, so that motion is now back on the floor from the original mover and seconder. Then I guess, Madam Clerk, because you said that the motion won't be voted on until we pick the membership. So we have 5 individuals, Councillor Carlton, Councillor Desai, Councillor Millen, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor Soever. Do all those 5 people wish to still remain?
Yes, please.
So that's whoever. Okay, so if you don't, just say you wish not to be removed. If you are to be remaining, okay. So then, Madam Clerk, how do we go through this election?
So we will go by alphabetical order first, and we'll hear from the councillors and briefly on why you wish to stand on this committee. So we will start with Councillor Carlton.
Okay. And how long do they have? 2 minutes?
Thereabouts.
Okay, go ahead. Councillor Carlton, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. My reasons for wanting to be on this committee stem from the fact that Georgian Bluffs is right next to Owen Sound. I think there's going to be some impact on us out here, or could be. I also feel that as a former business owner and commercial property owner in Owen Sound, as well as I was on the Owen Sound Downtown Improvement Association as a member and for a brief time as a chair, I think that gives me some background on some of the issues that Owen Sound and especially the downtown commercial area could be impacted by. So I think I'd like to bring that level of expertise to the committee. So thank you for consideration to all of council.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carlton. Next, Councillor Desai, is that correct, Madam Clerk?
That is correct.
Okay, Councillor Desai.
Thank you very much. So I strongly believe that a prosperous urban area for a great county leads to a prosperous great county in itself. I've been on municipal councils since 2014. Prior to that, I was heavily involved with the Chamber of Commerce in Grey Highlands from 2011 until 2017. And prior to that, my schooling was in business and accounting. So I'd like to bring that expertise to the task force. And I hope you'll consider supporting me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Desai. So then next we have Councillor Millen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. As a former warden, I think I'm uniquely positioned to know how the larger urban centers in our community impact the balance of the county. I think there's a bit of insight there that I could bring to the committee. I think it's important too to have somebody that doesn't reside directly adjacent to the large urban centers to maybe have a little more independent perspective of how the urban centers affect the broader community. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Okay, thank you for that. Next, I have Councillor Robinson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, members of Grey County Council, for considering me for this task force. I want to start off by saying that I am a member of council, county council, that is a neighboring municipality to one of the towns, being Hanover. So I have an interest. I also have I have the support that I think will be needed on this committee to look at the data, interpret the data, provide a strong voice on it. I have experience living, working, and shaping urban communities. I have also had the experience of being on a few planning committees that contributed to the success of urban settings. Sure, I'm a mayor of a small urban rural community, but I certainly have the experience and voice to contribute to this committee, this task force, and it would be my pleasure to do so.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Robinson. And lastly, we have Councillor Swever.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. And my interest in serving on this task force is, and I thank Brian for his endorsement of me, because I'm from a municipality that's the furthest away from this, and also the municipality that funds 27% of the county budget. So we are the next urban center in the Grey County. We're not entirely urban, but we're certainly developing urban areas in Craigleith and the area around Thornbury with the rapid development. So, and growing up in Toronto, I have some knowledge of the issues that confront urban areas, and I recognize the issues that are confronting Owen Sound and Hanover, and I'd be very pleased to serve on this task force to help with those issues. Thank you, and I hope I'll get some support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Swever. So then, Madam Clerk, how do we go about the voting?
So I can see everyone on my screen, with the exception of Councillor Desai. So if he could put his video on, that would be appreciated, just for momentarily, so we can do the voting. The voting will just be by raising of hands. It will be an open vote. And if you keep your hands up for just a moment while I count, then that would be great. It will go in alphabetical order, same as what we did for the speaking. Would you like me to proceed, Mr. Warden?
Heather, how many times do people vote?
You can vote for up to 4 times, because we're looking for 4 members and we have 5 wishing to stand.
Oh, no, wait a minute.
Sorry, we're only doing 2.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
My head was in the 7, so you can vote twice.
Yes, yes.
You don't need to, but you can vote twice. Sorry, I was.
So Councillor Carlton, for clarity?
For clarity, are we allowed to vote for ourselves?
Yes, you are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just for clarity then, so we're not using the raise your hand on your computer, you're physically raising your hand on the screen.
That is correct. I can see every council member on my screen.
Okay.
Okay.
So you may proceed.
Thank you. Votes for Councillor Carlton. Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. Thank you. Votes for Councillor Desai. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Thank you. 7. Votes for Councillor Millen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you. Votes for Councillor Robinson. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Thank you. Oh, Tara thought she had 7. Let me see Councillor Robinson again. My apologies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I only see 6. Okay. 6 it is. Thank you. And Councillor Soever. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so we have a tie. We have Councillor Millen with the highest number of votes, and then we have Councillor Desai and Soever with 7 votes each. So we will re-vote on Councillor Desai and Councillor Soever. Okay. Those voting in favor of Councillor Desai, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7. Those voting in favor of Councillor Soever. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Councillor Soever is our second member of the task force. Thank you very much.
All right, so we have made a decision, and I guess, is that fair to say that the representatives outside the 3 are from the furthest away from the areas?
That is correct.
I thought I'd get a smile out of Councillor Millen on that one. No. No. All right. Okay, so that's been decided. So now we're going back to the original motion that was moved by Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that with regards to sort of supporting the task force, the recommendations, and the membership. Is there any further questions on that motion? Seeing none, is there anybody opposed to that? That is carried. Okay, thank you. That only took 5 minutes. So moving on now to the next one is also fees and service bylaw update, and that's moved by Councillor Woodbury and second by Councillor Keaveney. And Heather, you're following this through as well?
Yes, I am, Mr. Warden. Thank you. So this is a routine report that comes forward as associated with under the Municipal Act. The last consolidated fees and services bylaw was completed in 2011, and updates have been brought forward to council since then with regards to different items that would then be incorporated in. The bylaw schedule is updated annually with the CPI and posted to the county's website. So since 2011, there have been several changes and additions to the county services, and so we wanted to just do a fulsome review of the fees and services bylaw. Really, a lot of it is administrative fees that have gone to a cost recovery basis rather than a specific amount, just in order to account for staff's time and cost of materials going forward. And there's also been the addition of the Sydenham campus to the county's asset portfolio. And so that schedule is brand new to this fees and services bylaw, and rental costs, et cetera, have been included in the fees and services as well. I would say that the most substantial changes are within the planning section related to subdivisions and condominiums, and a couple under forest management. So before I get to the planning section, if there are any questions on the general fees and services updates, and as those were highlighted in red or through strikeouts for ease of reference, I'd be happy to answer those. If not, then I'll ask Stephanie Lacey-Avon, who was really instrumental in the planning section, to speak to any questions related to the planning section.
Okay, well, thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there any questions to the fee schedule from County Council?
I see Councillor Fleet.
Councillor, oh, okay, he's still here. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Fleet. Where are you? There we are. You got to take your mute off. You're still on mute. Councillor Fleet, you're on mute. Where'd he go? Madam Clerk, I lost Councillor Fleet.
Yes, I don't see him either. I have no video or
he did say he was going to leave around 1 o'clock, so he must have, maybe that was what he was telling
Maybe that's
us.
what he was doing. Yes, sir.
I couldn't read lips, so. Okay, so is there any other county councillors wish to speak on the fees and service bylaw update? I hear none, Madam Clerk.
I don't see any, so I see Stephanie has joined us. Thank you. And she'll just provide an overview of the planning section changes.
Okay, Stephanie. That's funny. I think I just saw her go by my office.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Oh, sorry.
Just take your time when you're ready.
All right, are we good to go?
You're good to go. I just saw you walk by my office going, hey.
think that's the other Stephanie. I'm at home right now. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm just going to highlight two of the main pieces here from the fees and services bylaw that we see from the planning department as the main changes with respect to the fees that we'll be receiving. So just to highlight the change in definition of what a major and minor county official plan amendment application type. So previous to this amendment here, when someone was submitting a major county official plan amendment, it was typically for larger scale comprehensive review applications, or for applications that were for lands that they're more than just the site specific area. And then when we had minor county official plan amendment applications, those simply encompassed every other application type. So if there is an applicant coming forward with a proposed pit or quarry or a winery, as well if there is simply just an application to facilitate a severance, they all were classified under the minor county official plan amendment application type. So through this change in definition, we are expecting to see larger applications that will fall under the major application type. So now with the revised definition, a major county official plan amendment speaks to applications with 3 or more technical study requirements, such as a planning justification report, traffic impact study, servicing review, etc. And then a minor application type would be any application where there would be including 2 or less technical studies, so a planning justification report and an additional report. So through that, we do see there will be, anticipate there to be larger increase in fees collected because more will fall under the major application type. The second piece bringing our attention to would be the subdivision and condo application fee change. We've included a graph in the report just through the financial implications sections of the report. It tells a lot more than what I can try and articulate through words. So it's simply restructuring how we have the fees laid out. Prior, we had 4 separate baseline fees, and then they increased incrementally per unit. Through this new change in structure, we're looking to instill an incremental fee structure up to a maximum amount, because we don't see staff time continually increasing as applications get larger and larger. It does reach a cap, and so that's where this fee structure is looking to reflect accurately time spent on application types. So again, the graph does speak a lot more, and I can certainly go into further details if there's further questions in this respect. And then there's a couple pieces that we have removed from our fees and services bylaw, or simply reduced. So there's less fees required for peer reviews for minor county official plan amendments. As well, we've removed a fee for municipally initiated county official plan amendments. As well, we've incorporated the potential for fee exemptions for any application types that would be considered and approved under the county's CIP program. So that's to further reflect the incentives that we're looking to push forward through that program. So those are the main highlights and changes. I'm happy to speak further on any of those, or if there's any questions.
Okay, Stephanie, I got the right Stephanie now. Any questions? Any questions to the fees? All right. Well, it looks like everybody's satisfied with your explanation there, Stephanie. So thank you very much for that. So there is a motion on the floor by Woodbury and Keaveney. Any further discussion on that motion? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Okay. So moving on now to the next one with regards to the Davenport subdivision, and this is moved by with regards to Councillor, hang on here, I get the right one, Councillor Burley and Councillor Carleton. And Randy, you're going to take this one.
Yes, just going to pull up the slides here.
Mr. Warden, while Randy's doing that, I'll just let council know that Councillor Fleet has left the meeting.
Yes. Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry. All right.
Take your time, Randy.
Can everyone see the presentation?
I can see it on my screen, Randy. I presume
Great.
everybody else can.
Excellent, thank you. So the purpose of this report is to consider a proposed plan subdivision known as Davenport. So the subject lands are located south of Churchside Road East and east of Gray Road 1 in the settlement area of East Linton in the township of Georgian Bluffs. The Cobble Beach development, which includes a golf course and residential dwellings, is located north of the subject lands. There are existing residential dwellings to the west and east of subject lands, as you can see on the screen. Directly south of the subject lands is the proposed Georgian Shores development, which is currently draft approved for 16 lots in a future development block. And back in 2018, the county received a plan of subdivision application that proposed to create a total of 8 single attached lots and a future development block. The proposal at that time was to service the development using municipal water and private septic systems, also known as partial services. Since that time, the township of Georgian Bluffs and the owners of Cobble Beach have reached an understanding that the township would assume the private sewage system located within the Cobble Beach development in the near future. This will allow the township to service other developments outside of Cobble Beach, including this proposed development. So based on the servicing potential, the applicant submitted several revisions to the proposed development, with the most recent proposed plan showing a total of 28 single detached lots and 1 future development block as shown on the screen. One of the lots being proposed lot 9, which is located in this area here, contains an existing single detached house. 2 additional blocks are also proposed to allow a temporary cul-de-sac to be created at the end of proposed Street B. Those will be removed should development proceed within the future development block. The proposed development also required an amendment to the Township of Georgian Bluffs official plan, as well as an amendment to the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw. Local official plan amendment number 7 has been approved, and the last date of appeal was yesterday, and today we have not received any appeals with respect to that. The associated zoning bylaw amendment has been passed also by the Township of Georgian Bluffs, and there were no appeals submitted. The applicant submitted updated reports with the subdivision application, which were circulated to various agencies for review and comment, and also posted on the county's website. So the Township of Georgian Bluffs held an initial public meeting on September 15th, 2018, and this was for an earlier version of the proposed development. They also held a second public meeting on June 5th of last year based on additional lands being added to the proposed subdivision through one of the revised submissions. Both written comments and comments received at the public meeting have been summarized in the staff report. And I'll just highlight some of the comments received and how in staff's opinion they've been addressed. Most of the concerns with respect to this development were regarding stormwater management, including concerns about the proposed method for handling the stormwater from the proposed development. Adjacent landowners also identified existing drainage issues in the area. There was concerns regarding impacts to the bay and fish habitat, and concerns regarding the capacity of the existing culverts, as well as recommendations regarding changes to the proposed stormwater management. With respect to these comments, the Grey Salt Conservation Authority and the peer reviewer that was retained by the township and the county have reviewed the proposed stormwater management reports and are satisfied with the proposed plan, subject to recommended conditions of draft approval, and those have been incorporated into the conditions as being recommended. Part of the stormwater management plan includes using the municipal roadside ditch upgrades that are downstream of the proposed Davenport subdivision. The township is in the process of finalizing an engineered plan for the municipal roadside ditch upgrades along Churchside Road East. And this will not only address the existing drainage issues in the area, but will also be designed to accommodate the additional stormwater from this proposed development. The developer will be responsible to pay for a portion of the cost to improve the ditch that they would be responsible for and replace the Balmy Beach road crossing culvert prior to any development proceeding. Maintenance of the roadside ditch will be the responsibility of the township once it's finalized, once it's been constructed. In terms of stormwater quality, it's proposed to be addressed through the use of what's called enhanced grass swales. and both Gray Sawmill Conservation Authority and the peer reviewer are satisfied with the design. It should also be noted that the township and Gray Sawmill Conservation Authority and the Ministry of Environment, Conservation Parks will need to approve the final stormwater design prior to draft approval and prior to any development. We also received a number of concerns regarding maintenance of the wastewater treatment plant, the sewage treatment plant capacity, and the need for a comprehensive master service plan. And as noted previously, the township has worked out an understanding with Cobble Beach to assume ownership of that sewage treatment system in the near future. The sewage treatment plant was constructed as part of the Cobble Beach development, and the intent has always been that the township would assume ownership once the Cobble Beach development reached a certain point in the overall development. The township has a desire to take ownership of the sewage treatment plant, which would allow this development as well as future developments to connect to full municipal services as mentioned. The township will be responsible for maintaining the sewage treatment plant, and the cost for maintenance will be funded by the users of the system, which is typical for any municipal water or sewer system. With full services being potentially available to service the remaining parts of East Linton, it's recommended that a master servicing plan be considered by the township for this area. And it's county staff's understanding that township planning and operations staffs will be presenting a report on this matter to township council before the end of the year. We also had concerns with respect to sewer lines and making sure that there's sufficient size to be able to connect to some future developments going forward. And the final design of the sewer mains will be reviewed by the township consulting engineer. And we have included conditions that speak to this to make sure that the sewer mains are designed in a way that will allow for future connections to exist. There was concerns regarding environmental impacts, including species at risk and the water intake. And there was an environmental impact assessment that was completed for the application. And there are conditions of draft approval that have been included to address those matters. We also received concerns regarding increased density, impacts to the neighborhood, the proposal being unacceptable, it not being responsible planning, it being a piecemeal approach, and it exceeding the 20-year planning horizon. And it's been demonstrated through the technical studies and the review of those studies by agencies and the peer reviewer that this proposed development can be considered subject to conditions of draft approval. The subject lands are designated in a settlement area, and growth and development are meant to be directed to settlement areas. And as such, this is an appropriate location for this type of development. The development will be serviced by municipal water and sewer services, which is the preferred form of servicing. And the location of the subject property is surrounded by a mix of low density residential development and future development lands. Therefore, the proposed development is compatible with the surrounding land uses. With respect to some of the other comments received regarding unsafe egress, increase in traffic, light pollution, parkland, property tax base, these have either been addressed based on the comments identified in the staff report or through conditions of draft approval. In terms of comments received by agencies, Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks provided further information and clarification regarding rules and regulations regarding bobolink and meadowlark habitat management plans. And again, those have been incorporated into the conditions. The risk management official for source water protection, the property is located outside of the intake protection zone for East Linton, and therefore no source protection policies apply. Canada Post noted that mail delivery will be serviced by centralized mail delivery, and those have been included in the conditions. And we also received some other comments from Enbridge, the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, Culture, Industries, and Historic Saugeen Métis. No concerns or objections. City of Owen Sound previously expressed concerns with the previous submissions of this proposed development. And that was when the proposed development was to be serviced by municipal water and private septic systems. With the development now being proposed on full municipal services, it's county staff's understanding that the previous concerns identified by the city have been addressed. Gray Sawmill Conservation Authority, in most recent comments, they generally have no objection to this proposed development. They requested several conditions be included, and those have been incorporated into the recommended conditions of draft approval. Transportation Services for the county also reviewed this, and they have no concerns. And the Township of Georgian Bluffs as I mentioned, they adopted a local official plan amendment number 7 and the zoning bylaw amendment. There was also a staff report that recommended a number of conditions of draft approval. And again, those have been incorporated into this decision. So based on the planning analysis provided in the staff report, it's county staff's opinion that the proposed plan has regard for matters of provincial interest under the Planning Act, is consistent with the provincial policy statement of 2020. It conforms to the county grade official plan. It also conforms to the Township of Georgian Bluffs official plan. And as such, staff are recommending that the proposed plan be draft approved, subject to the conditions of draft approval attached to the report. And I'd be happy to take any questions, Warden McQueen.
Okay, well, thanks, Randy, for that explanation and very thorough. And again, thank you for that. Any questions from County Council? Councillor Potter.
Yes. I note that the surrounding lands are either already developed or slated for future development. And I'm always talking about the longer term implications for some of these things. And I note that it says that this development doesn't trigger a traffic impact study, but I always wonder at what point do a lot of small developments trigger a traffic impact study, because sooner or later you get enough small developments that you have busy roads. So I'm just wondering if we have looked at the long-term issues in this area, which I know can get quite busy in the summer. Also the drainage, because it's one thing we've learned over here is that drainage eventually catches up to you, and we are having to deal with a lot of things that go back through the history of development that weren't looked at earlier when a lot of smaller developments came online. So have we looked at those two things and looked at the long-term situation as these things kind of develop one next to another?
Okay, traffic and stormwater management. Randy, comments?
Those are all great questions for sure. With respect to the policies that trigger normally a traffic impact study from a county official plan perspective, it's usually 50 lots or greater. But as Councillor Potter indicated, as you add 28 lots here, 16 lots here, when do you have to review that? And I think looking at this area, there's a couple things. One, there are traffic impact studies that are triggered once Cobble Beach reaches a certain point. And I think it's at 400 units. And I think they're getting close to that. So that will be looked at as part of overall what is the traffic doing in this area, because Cobble Beach no doubt is a larger development than the development that's before for council at this point. I think also when if any development were to proceed on the future development block, as well as the Jordan Shores development, which is right in behind this development, if that future development block were to proceed with development, we would have to look at the overall traffic impacts at that time for sure. And same with that, the overall stormwater and drainage for this area. Looking at this piece, although the peer reviewer in the township recommended that based on the roadside ditch upgrades, which they were already planning to do along Churchside Road East, they felt based on the 28 lots anyways, that it made sense to utilize those roadside upgrades or ditch upgrades to service this particular development. But again, going forward for the future, if there's any development on the future development block, that would need to be looked at more comprehensively from an overall stormwater management system perspective.
Okay, thanks for that, Randy. Any other? Councillor Gamble. You're on mute there. You're on mute, Brian.
Sorry about that again. Randy, I've noticed that there's no developer's name attached to it. Is that something we don't do anymore?
Oh, it's actually the name of the development is Davenport. So Murray Davenport is the primary developer. It's MJD.
Yeah, I know who you mean. Good,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from county councillors?
I see Councillor Millen and Councillor Soever.
Councillor Millen and Councillor Soever. Go ahead, Councillor Millen.
2 questions real quick, Randy, if I might. I take it there's no stormwater management pond in this development? You talked about swales being the way they're dealing with storm management. Okay, I see your head nodding. That's good. The other question was no response from SON?
No response from SON. No, we only received comments that are summarized in the staff report. So no comments from SON with respect to this proposed development. They were circulated for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah, interesting. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no
Thanks, Councillor Millen. Councillor Schweber.
Yes, I would just like to reiterate Councillor Potter's comments. We have a lot of issues that are now upon us from previous decisions we made on small developments. And particularly with there's no stormwater management pond, the downstream effects, especially with the amount of rain we've been having. We had a big rain event here and very localized in Thornbury. We had 2 feet of water on the Highway 26 here, just down from the town hall. And so I think, you know, we are struggling to catch up with our stormwater management here. And I think it's something that we need to keep our eye on, because once you have the developments, then you're constrained with what you can do. You can't really put a big ditch where there's a house or a pond where there's a home. So that does create problems, and we have lots of them, trust me.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks for those comments, Councillor Schweber. Are there any other comments to the Davenport subdivision that's been moved and seconded?
I see Councillor Burley.
Oh, go ahead, Councillor Burley. Or are you? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Our engineers that looked at this subdivision did not want to have stormwater management ponds in this particular area. They preferred to use open ditch to the bay. The next phase of Georgian Shores proceeds is in a different watershed and will take a different direction for drainage out of there. That's why it will not impact this particular subdivision. This point of interest for everybody.
So if Georgian Bay fills up, there's a bigger problem, right?
No, there's no problem. It's just a different approach to address the drainage.
Right.
We've handled everything to date so far.
Good. Good. All right. Thank you for that. Any other questions to this resolution? Hearing none. Is there any opposed? Okay, that is gets carried. So then moving on to the next one is with regards to our development charges, and that's moved by Councillor Hutchinson, second by Councillor Patterson, and Kevin and Randy, you're going to speak to this resolution.
Yeah, thank you, Warden McQueen. I'll start it off, and Kevin can help assist as well as we go. Earlier this year, the province made changes to the Development Charges Act that required municipalities to offer what's called payment plans for paying development charges for certain types of development. And this would be over a period of time. So for rental housing and institutional developments, the payment plan for development charges can be paid over a 5-year period or a total of 6 installments. And for nonprofit housing, the payment plan for development charges can be over a 20-year period or a total of 21 installments. The first payment for these payment plans would be due upon the date of an occupancy permit or the date the building is first occupied, whichever comes first. So normally the development charges are due at time of building permit. The county's current development charge bylaw only applies to residential developments, and therefore a county development charge does not apply to institutional developments. The Development Charge Act also included the freezing of development charge rates. And this would be at the time of when a site plan application has been submitted for development or when a zoning bylaw amendment application is submitted, whichever application is later. This is based on what we refer to as Section 26.2 of the DC Act. So the payment plans are Section 26.1, the rate freezes are 26.2, and that's important just based on, we reference those sections in the motion if there's any questions regarding that. The rate freeze only applies to applications submitted after January 1st, 2020 of this year, and are frozen for a maximum period of 2 years from the date the application is submitted. And these changes to the DC Act were introduced by both Bill 108, the More Choices Act, and Bill 138, the Plan to Build Ontario Together Act. Some of the changes made by those two bills have been proclaimed, whereas some have not been to date. And at the time of writing this staff report, Bill 197, entitled COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act, was at that time recently introduced by the province, which proposed to make changes to a number of acts, including the Development Charges Act. Since that time, the province has actually passed Bill 197, which occurred Tuesday of this week. Staff are still reviewing what has been passed by Bill 197, but based on the preliminary review, it appears that the changes to the Development Charges Act will help provide the information that the county has been looking for in order to align and finalize the proposed changes that we would like to make to the county's development charges bylaw. And so staff plan on bringing forward a report of those proposed changes to the DC bylaw in the near future so that the public review process can start. In the meantime, the county is starting to receive requests to enter into deferral payment plans with respect to section 26.1. Development charge rate freezes, this will only apply when the county DC rate changes as per the annual indexing scheduled for January 1st of 2021. And therefore staff anticipate that the rate freeze payments will begin to apply starting next year. And that's why we haven't received any requests at this stage. The DC Act allows municipalities to charge interest on payment plan installments and rate freezes. For payment plans, the interest rate can be applied from the date the development would have been normally payable. So again, that's at the time of building permit, to the date the actual installment is paid. And the rate cannot exceed the prescribed maximum rate. For rate freezes, the interest rate can be applied from the date the site plan or zoning application is received, the development charge is payable, which again would normally be at time of building permit. The province has indicated that they are not planning to prescribe a maximum rate and to leave the determination of the interest rate to be charged to municipalities. County staff, we've consulted with the current development charges consultant regarding how other municipalities are treating these interest rates. It has indicated that the interest rate applied should relate to the time value of money, which can occur essentially in two ways. One is in terms of lost monies related to interest earning. And what this means is that the development charge would have been collected at the time of building permit issuance, which is the normal time of when DCs are due. The development charge reserve would be in a higher position and therefore earn interest. So therefore there's a loss in revenue in terms of earning interest with respect to not having the full DC collected at the time of building permit. There's also the cost of borrowing money from the date the development charge is determined. And this is where if the county were to borrow money because we haven't collected all the development charges to date in order to move forward with a major infrastructure project, obviously the county would be paying interest on that. And we also wouldn't have all the DCs that would have been normally payable at that time. So there is a loss in potential revenue that way as well, or monies. The Act does not prescribe how the interest rates are to be calculated. And therefore municipalities can determine what rates should be applied. If, however, the rates are seen as punitive, there is the possibility that the province may then consider prescribing a maximum interest rate. In speaking with Hemson and researching what other municipalities are using for interest rates, municipalities are generally considering a number of options, and those are outlined in the staff report. They include everything from a Bank of Canada prime rate plus a % markup, using the non-residential construction price index, using a borrowing rate on a 20-year plan, just a multitude of different options that municipalities are looking at for interest rates. Some are applying the same interest rate as per outstanding property taxes and utility bills, and some are just applying no interest. In order to try to simplify the interest rate, county staff are recommending a fixed rate versus a variable rate to provide transparency and cost certainty to developers, and to also help reduce the administrative burden to local. And so staff are recommending that the following interest rates be applied. So for rate freezes, we are recommending a rate of 3.5% compounded annually. And this interest rate is in line with the Canada's prime rate, also known as the prime lending rate that major banks charge, as well as the county's average indexing of development charge rate increases over the past 3 years. So Kevin's calculated that, and that's roughly coming in at around 3.5%. For payment plans associated with rental housing and nonprofit housing developments, staff are recommending that no interest be charged in order to try to continue to encourage more rental housing and nonprofit housing developments. As we've noted in staff reports, there's an ongoing need for more affordable housing throughout Grey County, and more importantly, purpose-built rental housing and secondary units. And one item that staff had suggested to help encourage more affordable housing was to review our development charges bylaw. As noted previously, the premise with development charges is that growth should pay for growth-related costs, so that these are not required to be paid by taxpayers. The Development Charges Act allows municipalities to exempt certain types of development from development charges, and certain types of development are already exempted under the county's current development charges bylaw. Staff had stated that to encourage more purpose-built rental housing and to encourage more secondary units, that council consider making some further changes to the DC bylaw to exempt these types of development. And based on this, staff are recommending that, that's why we're recommending that a 0% interest rate be used during the deferred payment plan for purpose-built rentals, nonprofit housing, again, to help try and encourage those types of development. Staff have also prepared an interest policy, which we've attached to the report. It just provides further detail on how the interest rate would be administered. And what staff would do is we would continue to monitor this, and if we find that economic or market conditions change or the prime lending rate increases significantly, then we may need to revisit this interest rate that is being proposed. And in order to help expedite the execution of these agreements related to payment plans and rate freezes as required by the Act, it's recommended that authorization be given to Director of Corporate Services and Director of Planning to execute these agreements. I don't know if Kevin, if you have any further comments with respect to what was here.
Did you leave any space for Kevin there, Randy?
Sorry, maybe not.
Randy's
put
done
a planner up there, and yeah, that's
it's all good. It's all good. Kevin, do you have anything to add?
No, Randy's done a very good job of explaining the report. So thank you, Randy.
He always does such a great job, that's for sure. Okay, thanks for that then. And are there any questions from county councilors? It is good that we have a bit of clarity now from the province in the sense of moving forward, Randy. So that part's just good that way.
Mr. Warden, I see Councillor Millen.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Millen. Sorry, I don't see you, but go ahead.
That's all right. Thanks, Mr. Warden. Randy, or maybe Kevin, do you see any appreciable or significant change in the pace of development because of these changes? Or is this just a shell game, a move the costs around to try to look like we're encouraging development? Or is it, do you think it will result in any significant change in the pace of development?
Randy?
I guess the response to that is time will tell. As propose incentives such as, for proposing 0% interest for purpose-built rentals, looking at things like our community improvement plan program type incentives and other things like that, I'm hoping that we will see a difference and we will see more built, because as noted, those are desperately needed in throughout Grey County. It's interesting that we actually, as part of our Affordable Housing Task Force presentation the other day, we're starting to look in some data and some statistics, and we are seeing a change in terms of historically single attached type dwellings and developments to more multi-residential type dwellings and developments. And actually what's under construction in most communities in Grey County, most were in the multiple residential area versus singles. So that's positive in that that's also, I think, a reflection that the market is dictating that and demanding that. But I also think that, some of the developments we have already entered into deferral agreements. One, for example, the Strathcona apartment buildings in Owen Sound, for example, we did a deferral agreement, or council approved a deferral agreement with respect to that, to see if the bylaw were to change, then maybe those could then be exempted. So we're starting to see more of those projects happening, and I'm hopeful that we will see more. as we offer these types of incentives.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And as you say, time will tell. Thank you.
Time will tell, but I think it's the development side that's driving these changes, whether it's cash flow or however, right? It's builders are sort of demanding it, right? So, any other comments, questions? Okay, this is moved by Councillor Hutchison, second by Councillor Patterson. Are there anybody opposed to this resolution? Hearing none, that is carried. Okay, moving on to face mask requirements, and this is moved by Councillor O'Leary and second by Councillor Compass, and Madam CEO, you're going to take on this report. Just hit your mute there, Madam CEO. We love to hear from you.
And my first question was, can everyone hear me okay? So hopefully.
Well, I knew that. That's why I had to tell you.
Intuitively, I knew there was a problem. Anyway, thanks very much, Mr. Warden. This report comes in follow-up to a discussion that many of you participated in on July the 3rd, where we had a joint meeting between this council, Bruce County Council, and Dr. Era. At that time, it was discussed that in the future, it may be prudent to put forward a bylaw to enable greater enforcement of the need to wear face masks. And so what this report is doing is really formalizing that discussion by bringing the question to this council. Do you wish to direct staff to work with the medical officer of health and Bruce County and bring forward a bylaw for consideration at a future council meeting? And this is all predicated on an identified need should that arise. So right now what we have is a Section 22 order from the medical officer of health where he's asked that everyone wear a mask in an enclosed public space. And I think what we're seeing out in the community since that order was issued was some good compliance, that people are listening and they are working hard to do the right thing. So where we are right now, things are apparently relatively stable when we look at our infection rates. The thing that we don't know is what the fall will bring. And so by working on a bylaw now, because it will take a bit of time and a bit of work on Michael's part and coordination between the two counties and the public health unit to get a bylaw put together and ensure that it's appropriate and right for Grey and Bruce County. Are you supportive of us continuing to work towards that? We may never need it. We may have, Dr. Era may determine that he wishes to take another path in the future, or we may be so fortunate as that the conditions don't ever warrant having to move to a more fulsome situation where your local bylaw enforcement folks and police are needing to step in to undertake enforcement of the need to wear masks in an enclosed space. So if I move down towards the bylaw considerations part of the report, the idea was that enacting a bylaw at the county level rather than each member municipality acting individually would provide that consistent message to the public. It would enable Grey County's member municipalities to take enforcement action and streamline any prosecution that might be required at that time. Really, I think we've all worked hard to demonstrate our commitment to COVID-19 infection prevention and public safety. And we're not sure how long we'll be in this place, but we believe it will be for some time to come that we need to be able to do that. So staff recommend that the decision to enact a bylaw be done in consultation with the medical officer of health. So this is not something that would be entirely driven at the staff level. We would be working closely with the health unit. And in response to changes in regulation from the province or increased spread of infection in the community, that meant that we felt that there was a real public health need to take further action. The bylaw itself, what we can foresee now is that it would provide the usual things that are in bylaws as far as definitions, how the bylaw would be applied and what it requires of individuals or businesses, the exemptions that are in place, and those are in place now under the Section 22 order. I believe that we would just continue on with those. How such a bylaw would be administered, enforced, what does inspection look like, what penalties would be incurred for non-compliance, and effective and repeal dates. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. This is the work that we would do with your support. We've included an in-camera section here if council has specific questions around the enforcement aspect of this. Michael, we can go in camera and Michael can speak to that directly, but at this point, I'm happy to take any questions of a general nature.
Thank you, Madam CEO. And just in summary, then basically, if this motion passed, you go back, create that bylaw, and then it'd be ready if need be.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. I don't know if we need to go on camera. We'll see what kind of questions, comments, questions from county councillors.
Councillor Robinson and Potter.
Okay, and I see Soever too. So, okay, go ahead, Councillor Robinson first.
Well, thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you. Kim, thanks for bringing this report forward. It's great being prepared as usual, so I appreciate the work on this. In the report under the Finance and Resource Implications section, it states that enforcement of the proposed, and my comment is very general. It states the enforcement of the proposed non-medical masking bylaw would be a new responsibility for the local bylaw enforcement personnel and police. My only comment would be, please consult with lower tier, specifically local police services, to ensure the compatibility within this bylaw. Thank you.
Your point is well taken, and absolutely, it's so important to ensure that everyone has a solid understanding of what the requirements and abilities that they have under such a piece of legislation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Warden, and thank you, Kim, for this report and for bringing this forward. My only comment, I am fully supportive of this. It's been proven that masks work and that they help to keep the spread down. I was just recently in Kingston, and they have a similar bylaw in place there, and it is almost fully compliant. Just about everybody complies with it. So they have very few issues. I think we'll see the same here. The only thing I take issue with is that I think we are a little too weak on allowing exemptions and allowing some people to not wear masks. I think we have to be as stringent as possible in our wording so that people understand that they must wear masks, and so that we give business owners and institutional owners and so on the ability to be strong. They know you can't come in without a mask. Because I know that a lot of business people are looking for that. They don't want to be left in the middle. They want to have a yes or no, you know, a clear picture of what is required. So I think since we had that meeting, there has been more and more proof that very, very, very few people should be exempt. There is no breathing issue. Even for people with asthma, there is no issue that way. There may be some people who are claustrophobic. I wear a CPAP device when I sleep. It took me a while to get used to it. I actually put it on in red just to be sure that I could breathe if the machine shut down. I went that far just to make sure I was comfortable with it. So it may take something like that, but I think people have to understand the importance of this. We have done a magnificent job in Grey County and Grey Bruce, and Dr. Era and his staff and all of our frontline medical staff deserve credit for helping to keep the number of cases here so low. And I think we have to continue that. And I think especially people from outside need to understand that we are going to be very, very stringent about making sure that people are wearing masks when they're in enclosed spaces. And the stronger, the more strength we can put into that wording, and the less wiggle room we have for people to say that, well, I have some sort of exemption, the better.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Potter. Yes, definitely wearing a mask is just that one next layer of protection for sure. Councillor Soever.
Yes, I'm also in support of moving forward. Right now, we don't have a problem. We could have a problem. We have a lot of visitors here. Mask compliance is variable, and certainly if the bylaw was worded, and I think it has to be worded consistent with the medical officer of health's order, which is quite a bit of flexibility. But ultimately, if you have a problem, I think it's good to have a bylaw so that local bylaw and police, like if somebody refuses to wear a mask and becomes obnoxious, certainly there are remedies with the Trespass Act, but it would be good to have the bylaw for those very rare instances where compliance becomes an issue. You could also have, for instance, an establishment, and I think the medical officer of health's order is requires best efforts. So, you know, if you observe a business that is exhibiting no effort, it's good to be able to have the local bylaw and be able to go there rather than calling the medical officer of health and saying, enforce this under your order, because you know his staff are extremely limited and busy, and it would just help out in that regard. So I'd say I'm in favor of this, as long as it's worded very similarly, because I don't think we want to go chasing down everybody. For its education is more important than you know, if you have the odd person. But you know, certainly where there's an identified problem, it's better to have local bylaw deal with it than call the medical officer who resides some distance from the Blue Mountains.
Okay, thanks for those comments, Councillor Soever. Any further conversation, Madam Clerk? Anybody else there?
Yes, Councillor Keaveney and
Okay,
Councillor
go ahead.
Mackey.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Keaveney, and then Mackey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden. Sorry, I'm getting an echo here. I just wanted to suggest, and I appreciate the suggestion of reaching out to municipalities, and I wonder if there could be consideration added to reaching out to chambers of commerce and BIAs who can really provide feedback from the business community. I've already had an unfortunate circumstance in my own place of business, and I appreciate the fact that there could be a bylaw and an opportunity to call a bylaw officer, but that customer is going to be long gone. So I think there needs to be clear detail and support and recommendation for business owners so they know how to approach those situations when customers refuse to wear a mask. I know Dr. Ayre has already stated he doesn't want to cause, you know, altercations in businesses. So I think clear direction for us as to how to approach such circumstances could be perhaps some language included in the bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Keaveney. And Councillor Mackey.
Thanks, Warden McQueen. And just to follow up on what Councillor Keaveney mentioned, I guess I have some concerns about the best efforts for small businesses, the requirement to verbally give instructions with someone that's not wearing a mask. I think that has the potential to set up confrontation. I guess I'm wondering, why isn't signage at the front of the establishment all that would be necessary so we avoid those confrontations? I mean, it's one thing for a big box store that's got lots of staff, but if you're running a small convenience store and you're the only staff person there, I just don't like the thought of them having to be the police in this. That's my comment.
So Kim, do you have a response to that or a comment?
I think that all of you are making excellent points, which is why we're taking some time to both work broadly with
Maybe shut your audio or video off there,
across the
Kim.
province and through the medical officer of health to consider what. I apologize. You can't hear me? Can you hear me, Paul?
It looks like Paul is frozen too. We might be having some issues at this end of the building.
Somebody in planning is probably watching Netflix. With the exception of the director, possibly.
There, our CAO is back with us.
I'm sorry, everyone. I have no idea what is going on with our internet today. I did want to say was working closely with municipalities from across the province. Michael has access to a group of colleagues who are all undertaking similar with the health unit on this. The comments that I'm hearing about the challenges that this poses for small business owners are well taken. And if you want to talk more about the enforcement thing, perhaps we can go into closed if that's what you'd like to explore that in any more detail, or we can do that when we bring the bylaw back. If we
Councillor Millen. Thanks, Madam CEO. Councillor Millen?
Well, I thought you had a couple others ahead of me, but I'm happy to speak now if you want me to.
Well, it's been hit and miss, so I'll make sure I'll get everybody. So go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. I'm fully in favor of having something similar to what Dr. Era has put in place, no doubt about that. My concern is around enforcement. To suggest is, well, I heard here that mentioned that the medical officer of health's resources are limited to for enforcement purposes. Well, I can tell you our bylaw enforcement is stretched here in Southgate, if not everywhere in that matter. And I certainly don't think we need a fully trained armed police officer running after somebody in the main street of Dundalk because they're not wearing a freaking mask. So I used to have a high school principal that talked about fringe idiots. And I think if we can just accept the fact that there are going to be some in our communities that just will not wear a mask or comply with anything, if we can just stay away from them or keep them away from us, that would be the easiest solution. I just cannot see expending a lot of resources on enforcement. I think most people are going to do the right thing as they are now, and those I think are our best efforts. I like the idea from somebody here that mentioned about signage at the front of a business to avoid confrontations. It should be clear that you need a mask to enter the business or any other enclosed space. If that doesn't deal with the issue, I don't think enforcement is going to be any kind of solution. So there you go. Those are my comments. Thank you.
It's interesting, Councillor Millen. Our Eugenia Falls was closed, but we still had people climb in there and fall off the rocks. So there is people that just don't follow rules. And
perhaps those were some of the people that my high school principal was describing.
Those are the ones we send the bill to too. Anyway, good points. I think I got some more people that want to speak here. So thanks, Councillor
Yes.
Millen. Councillor Klumpus, I got Councillor Keaveney, and I'm just trying to catch everybody as I see them on my screen. So go ahead.
Councillor
Barb.
Desai, and Councillor Potter has a further comment as well.
Okay, I'm writing them down. Thank you.
So I think I'm on, Mr. Warden.
Yep, go ahead.
Thanks very much. Yeah, this is a really difficult issue, and I absolutely agree with Councillor Milne. Enforcement is really the big challenge. It places a real onerous position on small business owners who are telling to potential customers that they can't come in because they haven't got a mask. It's also onerous from the perspective of local enforcement or bylaw officers, as Councillor Milne suggested, is going flat out in other areas, and we're very, very limited in staff. I'm just wondering if there would be an advantage to extending the MOH order and having that posted as signage within small businesses, as that seems sometimes to maybe have a little more influence, a little stronger influence than simply a bylaw that you know, with the staffing situations we all have, that folks know that it can't be enforced and chased down at any rate. So I'm just wondering if that is something that could be considered.
Okay.
Extend the MOH order until at least the week after Labor Day, which will probably have some of our visitors at least headed back home.
So Madam CAO or Michael, comments? Thanks,
I can let you know that I did speak with Dr. Era about extending the order, and certainly he is very open to doing that past the August 21st deadline, especially to give us all additional time if we need it to work on the bylaw. So certainly that's very possible.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. It was suggested signage, which is great. I have signage all over my doors, but a lot of people don't read it. We tried to give out free masks, and people didn't even want to accept those if they didn't want to take a mask, and can't ask them why not. So it is posing an issue for a business in particular that employs teenagers. You can't put that kind of responsibility on them. My hope is that peer pressure will really kick in community atmospheres, and that people will start to recognize that, you know, they're one of the very few minority who aren't wearing a mask, and maybe they better get one on, and that will work. Because it just doesn't work. In a business like mine, you can't call a bylaw officer when somebody comes in without a mask, because they will never get there in time to deal with it. So it's just an awful lot of responsibility for businesses.
Thank you for that perspective, Shirley. And I guess the question is under, I guess to you, Madam CEO, or to Michael, and maybe Dr. Era spoke to this, compliance-wise with the order from the health unit, do we get 80% compliance? Do we get 85% compliance? Is there any number out there that anybody? This goes back to Councillor Millen too. I mean, what is the compliance? I mean, we've had issues where people have come into this country and they're supposed to self-isolate and they don't, and it's a serious thing as well. And I mean, this is a serious thing with regards to this pandemic. We're in a pandemic situation, so. Yeah, it's a tough call here for sure. Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I just want to echo Councillor Keaveney's comments. You could have all the signs everywhere. The building could be covered in signs. You'll still have people who walk in without reading those signs. And I completely agree. It's a bit of a unfair pressure to put onto a business owner, but at the same time, I feel that the order from the health unit doesn't quite go far enough. It makes a recommendation, but if you can't if you can't wear a mask or if you don't want to wear a mask, it sort of just says, well, you don't have to. The reason I would support a bylaw is basically so that it brings sort of everyone's putting masks on now. I've got to go look for my Batman mask. I have it stashed away. Doesn't cover the right parts, but it's a mask. But I think it puts all businesses on a level playing field in the sense of there's a certain process that needs to be followed, and if someone's not wearing a mask, you're allowed to tell them, well, you're not allowed to come in here if you don't have a mask. It's through a bylaw. It's not a health or it's through an enforceable bylaw, right? Whereas right now, businesses aren't required to tell someone not wearing a mask not to come in. So I think we either amend the order from the health unit to make it mandatory for businesses to say that if you don't have a mask, you can't come in, or we have a bylaw that says if you don't have a mask, you can't come in. There needs to be a certain uniformity, which I think is what the bylaw is trying to address. Thank you.
Okay, I have next Councillor Potter, Body, and Soever. Is that right? Oh, you're not speaking, Councillor Body? Okay. Councillor, thank you, Councillor Desai. Councillor Potter, and then Councillor Soever.
Thank you, and I understand Councillor Keaveney's problem. It's the same problem a lot of small businesses have. And again, it's the clarity. It's the wiggle room that people feel they have that, well, I don't have to wear a mask. Nobody's telling me I have to wear a mask. But what is happening in some places is that it's not the business owner who's being confronted. It's the person without a mask who's being confronted by other customers and starting altercations that way. So you may not have the option of yes, it's peer pressure, as somebody mentioned, and that peer pressure is taking the form of sometimes violence. We have to think about who do we represent? The minority of wannabe rebels who think that they're being somehow rebellious by not wearing a mask in this situation, or the majority of people who strongly feel that they want to survive this, they want their loved ones to survive it, and they don't want anybody that they know or love being sick with this virus or possibly dying from it. In my view, I represent the majority of people who want to be safe and who want everyone else to be safe. So they want us to put this mask bylaw in place and do it as quickly as possible and with as much stringency as possible. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Councillor Potter and Councillor Soever. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, and I think, you know, the purpose of having the bylaw, and I think we can't abrogate our responsibility and say, well, we don't have the enforcement capability and the bylaw won't get there on time. I mean, we've had to, in the town of Blue Mountains, with the number of visitors here, we've hired 6 additional bylaw officers for the summer. And not that they're handing out tickets, they're educating. And we find that at least on the beaches, there's much better compliance with social distancing. And when they see a person in uniform walking around, and sometimes they're just giving advice. Other times they were calling water rescue to go and rescue some kids that were out on the lake. So we do have a responsibility to protect our citizens and our residents. And so it is a cost, but you know, it's a cost of being a municipality. Is you've got to be able to implement safety measures for your population. And I'm not saying we go around handing out tickets right and left, but as Shirley pointed out, you can't expect teenagers to do that. So if she's having a problem, there's nothing wrong with having a bylaw officer drop by in a uniform and just look at people. And I think you'll get pretty good compliance because these are trained individuals. They're providing education. They're not, you know, it's just advice, and they know how to deal with people in a non-confrontational manner where you don't want students taking that on, you know, that responsibility on.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Sweber. I think back in '99, Grey County introduced a no smoking bylaw. And then by 2003, the province implemented a provincial-wide no smoking bylaw, and then it was right across the board. Province isn't interested in doing that, so it's up to each jurisdiction or municipality or however to deal with this. What's your wish? Do you wish to go on camera to get further discussion, or do you want to go and support this? Staff, along with working with others, will develop a bylaw. It's there. If we need to implement it, we could go in camera at that time. If we get to a point where we need to implement it, Madam CAO, that's sort of what I'm sort of feeling from. There's a lot of debate here. And there's also, as Councillor Klumpus has suggested, can Dr. Era extend his order, like to continue that? I think Simcoe County, a lot of different jurisdictions do have also orders out there, and it seems to be, you know, that peer pressure seems to be out there that yeah, this is the new norm. If you want to go into a business, you wear a mask, and with the exception of, as Councillor Millen said, there's a few out there that won't abide, but I guess you can ask them not to enter your business either, I guess, and see where that goes from there. But Madam CEO, are you gathering that we just sort of, you go back and if we need it, you come back with the...
Absolutely, more than happy to do that. If you want to take a couple of minutes to hear from Michael in closed, we could do that this afternoon, or we can simply take all the great comments that you've given us today to work with, and and use that information to develop something. And we'll continue to work closely with the medical officer of health and make sure that he's advised of the comments that you've made today as well.
Okay, what's your wish, County Council?
Well, Mr. Warden, if I might, and notwithstanding the good advice that Michael would likely give us, or I know he would give us, I'm not sure what the point of going in camera at this point would be.
No.
Let's have the staff generate a draft bylaw, and you know, if there's a need to go in camera to answer some questions regarding that bylaw, then we can do that. But I'm not clear on what advantage there would be to go in camera at this point.
That's sort of the clear senses that I'm sort of getting here as well. Is there somebody wish to go in camera? Councillor Potter?
No, actually, I was going to say I would rather let staff take what we've had to say back and then come back to us with a report and a proposal for a bylaw. I just wanted to inject a little levity. I saw a sign that might interest Councillor Keaveney, and which said that in the spirit of personal freedom, you are welcome to not wear a mask. By the way, in the spirit of personal freedom, we allow our chefs and servers to decide on their own level of personal hygiene. So you can take it from that. But I don't think that we need to go in camera at this point. I'd rather let them mull it over and decide what we should do next.
So I think peer pressure seems to be the big stick, and certainly we're in an area of Grey Bruce where we have a relatively low number. I think it's 115 cases. I think there's one maybe active case right now, and so we're very good at where we are. So Madam CEO, I'm gathering that we'll just leave the motion where it is. It's on the floor, and if there's another meeting when you bring back a bylaw, or if need be, then maybe if we need to go on, we'll go on camera at that time. So this is moved by... Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Councillor Carlton had indicated that she would like to speak as well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead, Councillor Carlton. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just a little different perspective that I have. When we're trying to get the message out there, I think we need to be aware of this whole generation of people who, unless it's on social media in front of them, they're not going to read it. They don't read a newspaper. They don't listen to a radio. They've got Sirius on or whatever. So there's a whole generation that we really have to figure out how we make contact with and get that message out to them. Thank you.
Maybe the point is they can read, but will they read?
Most of them don't read a newspaper or listen to a radio station.
They don't even listen to their parents sometimes. All right. Well, this is moved by Councillor O'Leary, second by Councillor Klumpus, that we move forward with that resolution. Is there any further discussion If not,
Councillor Keaveney has one final thought.
okay, sorry, Councillor Keaveney, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Warden, and quickly, just one last thought in relation to the mask that might be considered is it's not easy wearing a mask, working in a kitchen 6-8 hours a day, and thinking of the mental impact on individuals. I'm seeing, it's only been a week now, but I'm seeing a lot of grumpy people. So if there's just any way that can be considered and the bylaw.
Right, okay. Well, it's I think they do say that if you feel that there's a distance issue, you can't maintain that distance, that you should wear a mask, right? And there's a number of points, but I think if you go to the, the businesses are out there, there's a lot more and more people wearing masks. It is the rate, it is the norm. Okay, so is there any further comments? Hearing none, anybody opposed to the resolution with regards to face mask requirements in the bylaw? Hearing none, that is carried. Okay, so this time, Michael, you're off the hook. We don't need to go in camera. All right. Is there any other business? I know Mayor Body's wanting to get out in that tea time, probably at 2:30. Maybe he's already gone.
Mayor Body has left the meeting, yes.
He has left the building. All right. Is there any other business? Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for today, and stay safe. And
Your Worship,
go ahead.
Is there room for notice of motion?
Oh, absolutely.
Or would that be under? I got confused between our municipal agenda, where we have a separate section for notice of motion. So
no, actually, we usually do. So go ahead. Notice of motion. Is there any notice of motion out there? Yes,
Mr. Warden.
Go ahead.
I would like to bring forward a notice of motion that we consider. Now, I've got to be very careful on how to word this, because I would like some breath on when it does finally come to council, to county council. But basically looking at reducing the speed limit on county roads in Grey Highlands to 40 kilometers an hour in certain segments.
So just for clarity, hang on now, Madam Clerk, if you're going to be specific, are you saying roads that are a certain 50 to be road to 40? Or should Madam Clerk should be more specific?
So, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
okay, Madam Clerk.
All right, thank you. So the intent is on certain sections of roads which are currently marked 50 to go down to 40. I'm just not sure as of right now as to which sections those will end up being. So, which is why I'm trying to be as vague as possible, so that when we get to the point where this motion will be discussed, which I'm assuming would happen at some point in September, that I can have a motion at that time, which will be more specific, and the notice of motion today would allow for me to be more specific rather than being specific today. I'd like to be vague today and be more specific when the final motion comes forward.
I'm going to get some guidance from our clerk in the sense of how specific you have to be. Madam Clerk?
Actually, I see the CAO has her hand up, so I wonder if she has comments before I comment.
Well,
Madam CAO.
Councillor Desai is very prescient in that on the August 13th agenda, we were planning to bring forward a report from transportation about levels of service on the county roads. So it might be best for that, if that report came forward, we had that discussion about the various county roads and the services that they're provided, the class of service and all the things that go into establishing speed limits, etc. It might enable you, Councillor Desai, to craft your motion most appropriately. Is that okay? I think it will either come August 13th or the first meeting in September.
Okay, so the first meeting in September is September 10th, right?
Yeah.
So is that enough time frame for you, Deputy Mayor? Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I would imagine it would be. I just wonder though if I could still have the notice of motion on the books for now, and then when it gets to it, if it turns out it is no longer needed, then I will withdraw it at that time. I wonder if that would be a possibility.
So, Madam Clerk?
So normally the notice of motion is the first thing on the agenda. So, and that would come prior to the report being presented by transportation staff. So the timing is just a bit off. So I wonder if it might be more appropriate to withdraw it at this time and move it forward at the end of the August meeting for the first meeting in September, as just a way of following a bit more of a logical process.
I will accept that recommendation, Mr. Warden. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Warden,
Go ahead, Councillor Weber.
I have a notice of motion. I'd like to bring a notice of motion that we amend the procedural bylaw or enforce it, as the case may be, so that we receive presentation materials before the meeting. Again, today we had the trails presentation, which was not on the website prior, and it would be useful to have deputation materials at least a certain number of days before we get them. So I'd like to bring a notice of motion that we put in place whatever has to be put in place so that we receive those before the meeting.
Okay, just going to you, Madam Clerk. Do you need a notice of motion to
We
change
do our
this?
very best to have those ahead of time. It was, we didn't get it this time until Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. So we do try, and we have a very good success rate with our presentations. And as staff, if that would be possible, to leave it with us, and we will work with our delegations to ensure that those presentations are on the website prior to. We'd like to have them on there as soon as the agenda is released. So if that works, then staff will work with our delegations to improve that process.
So I guess by saying that then would be is they're not a delegation if they don't have their presentation ahead of time. Is that maybe fair to say?
We will work with them to get their presentation before the council meeting, before the agenda goes out, so that we can ensure we have all of that before.
Okay, so Councillor Swerver, do you wish to proceed with your notice of motion, or do you want to hold off?
I think that's fine, and we'll see how that works. We here, if we don't have the presentation before Friday noon, then we cancel the delegation. And we found that when people are advised of that, they get it in on time.
Very good. Okay. Wow, we saved an hour off next meeting. We didn't get those two notices, just giving you guys a hard time. So it's been a long day here. So they're all certainly thoughtful notice of motions to come forward, and I know that they're all important for sure. Okay, so are there any other notice of motions? All right, thanks for that, Councillor Desai, for pointing that. I don't know how that got missed off the agenda, but it wasn't there, so that's good. Is there any other business? All right, so hearing none, I gotta get my cheat sheet here. So moved by Councillor Burley and Councillor Hutchinson that we adjourn at 2:27. Anybody opposed? That is carried. Well, thank you, everyone, and have an enjoyable rest of July, and we'll see you in August. Hard to say that, August. Councillor Millen will be out there combining. Hey? All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Goodbye, everyone, and have a safe summer.